Chapter 141. In a dense forest, Yi Xian and the others stood quietly. In front of them were two small graves. In the two graves were Li Feng and Wang Ming. According to their rules, they were buried where they died. Yi Xian stood in front of the two graves for a long time. Finally, he said softly, "We'll continue to be brothers in the next life." After saying that, he turned and left. Lu Banzwang walked to the two graves, squatted down, and placed two large pancakes in front of them. "We'll continue to be brothers in the next life." Ling Han and the others also walked to the two graves and said their goodbyes one by one. Gan Wei hugged Li Feng's grave and cried for a long time. The others also had tears in their eyes. They came from the divine central continent together and had experienced countless battles of life and death. Now, there were fewer and fewer people, but the world was cruel. If you didn't fight and work hard, your life might be worse than a dog's. It was better to die a heroic death than to live a cowardly life. No one wanted to live a cowardly life. On the side, Lu Kuang and the others were silent. They naturally understood how Yi Xian and the others felt at the moment, because they had also experienced this kind of loss of close friends and brothers. It was possible that one day they were drinking together, and tomorrow there would be one less person. Accidents or tomorrow, you never knew which one would come first. After a while, Yi Xian and the others began to clean up the battlefield. Many of the people they killed were not ordinary people, and the things they carried were naturally not ordinary. An hour later, Yi Xian and the others went straight to the imperial palace of the Tang Empire. Yi Xian rode a black wolf, and on his left and right were Lu Kuang and Lu Banzwang. Behind the three were Bai Zhe, Ling Han, and the members of the 9th mercenary group. If the beasts brought by Bai Zhe were added, they were equivalent to an army, and an elite army at that. Just like that, the group went straight to the imperial palace. Wherever they passed, no one dared to stop them. For a moment, the entire imperial capital of the Tang Empire was in an uproar. Therefore, the 100,000 black armored cavalry outside the two realm cities suddenly retreated and returned to the imperial capital at an extremely fast speed. Not only did the 100,000 black armor cavalry return to defend, but even the troops from all over the Tang Empire immediately rushed towards the imperial palace. If the palace was gone, it could be said that half of the kingdom of Jiang was dead. Because this was the highest institution of the Tang Empire, and also the brain of the Tang Empire. If this place were to die, the Tang Empire would be like a piece of loose sand that would collapse with a single touch. Not only the official army, but even some martial artists among the common people also rushed to the imperial capital. Because now, it was really time for the country to perish. Tang Empire's imperial capital. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others swaggered straight to the palace. During this time, no one came to stop them, nor did they dare to. No one could stop Yi Xian and the others if the 10,000 Dharma realm powerhouses did not take action. After a while, Yi Xian and the others arrived in front of the imperial palace. At this moment, the gate of the imperial palace was closed, and thousands of archers gathered on the wall. An old man stood in front of the imperial palace. It was the Tang Empire's elder. The elder stared at Yi Xian and said, "Do you really want to fight to the death? If you do this, everyone..." At this moment, a sword light suddenly flashed in the field. The next moment, the heads of several Tang Empire soldiers on the wall flew. The moment Yi Xian made his move, Lu Kuang and the others suddenly rushed to the top of the wall. In an instant, dozens of archers on the wall were instantly killed. With the attack of Bai Zhe and the others, the battle on the wall instantly became one-sided. Yi Xian suddenly pointed at the palace gate in the distance, and a flying sword directly slashed at the palace gate. Boom! The palace gate instantly collapsed and fell to the ground. Behind the palace gate, there were more than 2,000 imperial guards of the Tang Empire. These 2,000 imperial guards stared at Yi Xian and the others. There was no fear in their eyes, only unafraid of death. Unafraid of death. They had no way out, they could only fight to the death. Yi Xian did not waste any time and directly rushed towards the soldiers with the spirit elegant sword. And behind him was a horde of nearly 10,000 demonic beasts. From the beginning to the end, Yi Xian did not care about the elder. The elder clenched his fists tightly, his face gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. Yi Xian directly rushed into the group of soldiers, and every time he waved the spirit-elegant sword, a bloody head would be cut off. And when the demonic beasts rushed in, the soldiers were instantly routed. Half an hour later, the soldiers on the wall were all dead. In front of Yi Xian, there were corpses everywhere. It was truly a river of blood. From the beginning to the end, the elder did not make a move. He wanted to, but he did not dare. It was not only because Yi Xian had the support of a sword immortal, but also because Lu Kuang and the others were all from the divine central continent. Were they ordinary people? They were definitely not ordinary people. If he were to attack these people, the consequences would be very, very serious. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others went straight into the depths of the imperial palace. Soon Yi Xian and the others arrived in front of a stone staircase. The stone staircase was very wide, nearly 1,000 feet long. At the end of the stone staircase stood a middle-aged man dressed in a dragon robe. This person was the emperor of the Tang Empire. There were also some soldiers and officials gathered around the emperor. There were even concubines. In this day and age, there were many women who practiced martial arts. Yi Xian held his sword and slowly walked towards the king of the Tang Kingdom. The soldiers around the king of the Tang Kingdom immediately took a step forward and stood in front of the king of the Tang Kingdom. The emperor walked out, and behind him was an old man with 2 sabers on his back. The old man's gaze had been fixed on Yi Xian from the beginning, and it had never stopped. The emperor shook his head and chuckled. "I've calculated everything except you. I never thought that the Tang Empire would end up like this because of you." Yi Xian turned to Lu Banzwang and the others. "Go and search. Take away everything that can be taken away. Whoever dares to stop us, then slaughter the imperial palace." Slaughter the imperial palace. Hearing this, the Tang Empire's people were furious. However, no one dared to make a move. Those who could beat them did not dare to fight, and those who could not beat them did not dare to fight. Just like that, Lu Banzwang and the others went straight to the imperial treasury of the Tang Empire. Looting the imperial palace. Ling Han and the others were excited. This was the imperial palace, the imperial treasury of a country. Even Lu Kuang and the others from the 9th Mercenary Group were excited. This was the first time they had robbed the imperial palace. In the field, none of the Tang Empire's soldiers and experts dared to stop them. They did not dare to stop them at all. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. This young man in front of them said that he would slaughter the imperial palace. This was definitely not a joke. As long as anyone dared to make a move, the entire Tang Empire would instantly become a Shura purgatory. For a moment, the field was quiet. At this moment, many martial artists suddenly rushed in from outside the imperial palace. These martial artists had come from all over the imperial capital. When they saw the corpses around Yi Xian and the others, these martial artists who were originally full of anger suddenly quieted down. Or rather, their imposing manner suddenly withered. There were not just a few corpses around Yi Xian and the others, but 5,000 to 6,000 corpses. The entire imperial palace was filled with an unpleasant smell of blood. Make a move? No one dared to make a move. Because Yi Xian did not make a move. If Yi Xian made a move, they would definitely fight to the death. However, Yi Xian did not make a move. In front of Yi Xian, the king of the Tang Empire stared at Yi Xian, his right hand clenched tightly. Fight to the death? If Yi Xian made a move, everyone in the Tang Empire would definitely fight to the death because the Tang Empire had no other choice. Since they were all going to die, why not fight to the death? But since Yi Xian did not make a move, many people did not have the idea of fighting to the death. Not to mention the soldiers around him, even he himself did not have the idea of fighting to the death. If they could live, who would want to die? At this moment, Lu Banzwang and the others were frantically looting. Almost everything valuable was taken away. In an imperial palace, how could there be a lack of valuable things? Therefore, it didn't take long for everyone's spatial rings to be filled to the brim. Fortunately, they found some spatial rings in the palace's treasury. Although there weren't many, only a dozen or so, it was enough. In front of the stone steps, Yi Xian and a group of demon beasts were still confronting the king of the Tang Empire and the others. More and more martial artists from the imperial capital came, but no one dared to make a move. The king of the Tang Empire also did not make a move. Obviously, he did not want to die yet. If he wanted to die, he would have already ordered for everyone to perish together. About half an hour later, Lu Banzwang and the others came out from the depths of the imperial palace. Everyone had an undisguised smile and excitement on their faces. Even Lu Kuang and the 9th mercenary group were full of smiles. After looting an imperial palace, it could be seen how rich they were. Lu Banzwang and the others came to Yi Xian's side. At this moment, the atmosphere suddenly became a little tense. At this moment, outside the imperial palace, a large number of troops had arrived. They were all troops from some cities around the imperial capital. Bai Zhe led a group of demon beasts to block in front of the troops, while Lu Kuang and Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian. To fight or not to fight? If they fight, it will actually be a bloody battle. Because there were a lot of people from the Tang Empire, and most of them were troops. Of course, if Yi Xian said to fight, then everyone would definitely fight. Everything depended on Yi Xian's decision. Yi Xian walked in front of the king of the Tang Empire. I'll give you two choices. First, follow me back to the Jiang Empire now, and you will personally negotiate with my king. Second, I will kill you. Negotiate? The king chuckled. Is it to be a prisoner? I am the king of a country, you want me to be a prisoner? You're thinking too much, let me tell you. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly slashed out with his sword. The sword was extremely fast, and many people in the field could not react in time. In an instant, the field suddenly quieted down. The king of the Tang Empire stared at Yi Xian, his eyes full of disbelief. At this moment, a light breeze blew, and the king's head suddenly fell from his neck, blood pouring out like a pillar. In an instant, everyone in the field was stunned. He was killed just like that? Not to mention the people of the Tang Empire, even Lu Banzwang and the others were stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian wiped the blood on the spirit elegant sword, and then said softly, "Not going to the Jiang Empire? Then go to hell." Having said that, he faced the imperial family not far away. "Come, let's change the king, then we'll continue talking." Everyone. Chapter 142. The surroundings were deathly silent. All the soldiers and cultivators of the Tang Empire were stunned on the spot. The dignified king of the Tang Empire had been killed just like that. Didn't they say they wanted to negotiate? They killed him because the negotiation didn't go well? Everyone looked at Yi Xian. They were furious. All of them were furious. Because this was undoubtedly a great humiliation to the Tang Empire. Thus, some hot-blooded cultivators charged at Yi Xian and the others. Since someone had made a move, the others weren't so afraid anymore and were about to attack. However, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot, and Lu Banzwang vanished along with him. Bang, 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 bang. This. Explosions and tearing sounds suddenly resounded. It didn't take long for Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang to return to where they stood, and there were over a dozen corpses on the ground. All the others who were about to charge out were stunned. He was killed just like that? The others in the surroundings instantly didn't dare to move. It was an instant kill. Yi Xian walked over to the members of the Tang Empire's imperial family with his sword in hand. Is there no one to be the next king? Meanwhile, a black-robed old man stood in front of Yi Xian, and he carried 2 sabers on his back. A Dharma realm expert. There were only 2 Dharma realm experts here. One of them was the king of the Tang Empire, and the other was the black-robed old man. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. What? You can't help but attack in the end? He'd sensed the black-robed old man's killing intent as soon as he arrived here. The black-robed old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian while the 2 sabers on his back were trembling violently. Meanwhile, Lu Kuang suddenly sneered. What? You intend to bully the weak? As he spoke, he walked over to Yi Xian's side and pointed his saber at the black-robed old man. The Central Divine Continent hates bullying the weak the most. If you dare to attack, then I'll immediately summon the Dharma realm from the Central Divine Continent. Ling Han and the others nodded successively. Dharma realm? Which one of them didn't have a Dharma realm expert behind them? There was an unknown rule in the central divine continent, and that was that the young should solve their own problems. If the strong bullied the weak, that would be extremely shameful. He didn't dare. There were too many great powers in the Central Divine Prefecture. If the seniors of the Central Divine Prefecture were to act, then it would definitely lead to a chaotic battle. So, it was strictly prohibited by the higher-ups. However, it was different in Qingzhou. It was a small place and there weren't many requirements. However, the situation was different now. Because Liu Banzwang and the others were from the Central Divine Prefecture. Their backgrounds were not simple. If he really wanted to bully the weak, he would definitely be poking a hornet's nest. Not to mention the Tang Empire, even Kuraki Academy and the Dark World wouldn't dare. The black-robed elder's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. At this moment, he realized that it was no longer just between Yixian and the Tang Empire, but between the Tang Empire and this group of people in front of him. It should be said that this was a matter between Kuraki Academy, the Dark World, and Yixian, but the Tang Empire wanted to get involved. A moment later, the black-robed old man shook his head and sighed. "You brought this upon yourself." With that, he turned around and disappeared. With the departure of the black-robed old man, only the 10,000 law realm was left in the Tang Empire. He had even less confidence. Yi Xian faced the Tang Empire's imperial family members. No one came out? At this moment, a young man stood up. The young man looked straight at Yi Xian without the slightest fear in his eyes. "I am the crown prince of the Tang Empire." Yi Xian nodded. "To the state of Jiang?" The young man sneered. "Let's go." "However, Yi Xian, remember, I will repay you 100-fold for what you have done to my Tang Empire today." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and the young man's voice came to an abrupt end. The young man's head flew off. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Seeing this scene, the Tang Empire's imperial family members' faces instantly turned pale. Yi Xian's right hand shook lightly, and the blood on the spirit elegant sword instantly disappeared. He sheathed the sword and said softly, "You won't have another day." With that said, he faced the Tang Empire's imperial family members with fear on their faces. Someone smarter. Come on, someone smarter. It was not that Yi Xian did not think of slaughtering the Tang Empire's imperial family, but he thought deeper. Slaughtering the Tang Empire's imperial family was not a good thing for the Jiang Empire. Because without the Tang Empire's imperial family, the Tang Empire would still exist, and the Tang Empire's main force would still exist. Without the Tang Empire's imperial family, there would be warlords within the Tang Empire. Although this was also a good thing for the Jiang Empire, why not nurture a puppet of the Tang Empire's imperial family? Most importantly, if the Tang Empire's imperial family dies, the warlords can truly gather their troops and stand on their own. At that time, although the Jiang Empire would no longer have the Tang Empire, there would be other countries. With the Tang Empire's imperial family around, the warlords would not dare to have their own mercenaries and stand on their own. Even if they stand on their own, the Jiang Empire could legitimately borrow the name of the Tang Empire's imperial family to send troops to annihilate them in the future. In fact, this was very troublesome, but there was no other way. If they really slaughtered the Tang Empire's imperial family, they would have to kill their way out of here. Kill these people, and the Tang Empire's soldiers who were rushing back to the capital. There was no end. They might not be able to kill them. He didn't want anything to happen to the people around him. Ling Han and the others were still injured and couldn't withstand the torment. What he had to do now was to bring them out safely. At this time, a youth stood up. The youth was only 15 or 16 years old. He was obviously a little timid, but he still stood up. The youth walked in front of Yi Xian. He glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, "I'll do it." Yi Xian said indifferently, "What's your name?" The youth said softly, "Tang Mu." Yi Xian nodded. "From now on, you are the king of the Tang Empire." With that, he pointed his sword at the Tang Empire's imperial family. "Who wants to be the king? Come out now." None of the imperial family members came out. Yi Xian nodded slightly. then no one has any objections. With that, he walked in front of the youth. Come with us to the Jiang Empire? Don't worry, we will guarantee your safety. The youth lowered his head slightly. All right. Yi Xian faced the Tang Empire's soldiers. Remember, he came out to save you. The soldiers were silent. Yi Xian turned to Lu Kuang. Brother Lu, please give us a ride. Lu Kuang thought for a moment, then nodded. Sure. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others brought the new king of the Tang Empire out of the city. Yi Xian even let the Tang Empire's soldiers follow Tang Mu. During this time, no one stopped them. Returned to the Jiang Empire. Yi Xian turned to look at Ling Han and the others. He wanted to bring these brothers out safely. Now that he had cultivated the sword eye, although he couldn't open his eyes, he could already see anything. He could even see more clearly than when he had eyes. After all, he was now observing everything with his heart. On both sides of the streets of the Tang Empire's imperial capital, countless people stood. These people were all looking at Yi Xian and the others. In their eyes, there was no concealment of hostility. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, They are very likely to take revenge on our Jiang Empire in the future. Yi Xian said softly, Therefore, our Jiang Empire must be strong enough. If our country is strong enough, others will never dare to bully us. The same goes for us. After we return, we will all try our best to break through to the Divine Unity tier. As he spoke, he glanced at Ling Han and the others. You too, everyone must reach the Divine Unity tier. Divine Unity tier. Ethereal opening tier was barely enough to survive in Qingzhou, but in the Divine Central Continent, it was completely insufficient. For example, if they were to fight with the 9th Mercenary Group, they definitely wouldn't be able to defeat them. Their current enemies were Kuraki Academy and the Dark Dimension, and these two powers were great powers in the Central Divine Prefecture. They had to become stronger. At this moment, a group of cavalrymen suddenly appeared on the open ground in the distance. There were only about 10,000 cavalrymen. Among them, Yi Xian saw some familiar faces, because some of them were Black Blade Guards and Daredevil Battalion. And the leader was a middle-aged man. Pei Xiaohu, the first great marshal of the Tang Empire. After learning that Yi Xian and the others had entered the imperial capital of the Tang Empire, Pei Xiaohu immediately withdrew his troops from Two Realm City and rushed back with his army of 100,000. In order to return to the imperial capital as soon as possible, he led the vanguard first. Unfortunately, he was still too late. The two sides faced off. Pei Xiaohu spurred his horse and arrived in front of Yi Xian and the others, his eyes fixed on Yi Xian. Behind Pei Xiaohu, over 10,000 cavalrymen stood in formation, ready to attack at any moment. After a moment, Pei Xiaohu suddenly said, What a good one, Yi Xian. I never thought that the Tang Empire would lose to you. Yi Xian rode his black wolf and arrived in front of Pei Xiaohu, saying, Two choices. First, fight. If we fight, perhaps we will all die, but your Tang Empire will definitely perish. Second, negotiate. Pei Xiaohu smirked coldly. Negotiate? You're negotiating? You're threatening? Yi Xian suddenly pointed his sword at Pei Xiaohu, saying, I'm threatening. You don't like it? Then let's go to war. Fight until your Tang Empire is completely destroyed. Pei Xiaohu's expression instantly turned ferocious. You want to fight? Report. At this moment, a cavalryman suddenly galloped over from afar. The cavalryman quickly came to Pei Xiaohu's side, then directly jumped off his horse and knelt on one knee in front of Pei Xiaohu, reporting to Marshal. The 9th princess of the Jiang country suddenly led tens of thousands of cavalrymen to chase after me. My army is in a stalemate with them at Mo Mountain. Marshal, please give us instructions. 9th princess. Hearing this, Pei Xiaohu's face suddenly became extremely ugly. In the end, this woman did not miss this opportunity and decisively sent troops. Pei Xiaohu fell silent. At this moment, Tang Mu suddenly said, Old Pei, my Tang Empire has no other choice. Marshal Pei looked at Tang Mu. Surrender just like that? Tang Mu shook his head. Isn't it a negotiation? Anything can be negotiated. Marshal Pei smiled bitterly. 6th Prince, negotiation? If you go to the Jiang country, How can we negotiate? There's no negotiation at all. Whatever the Jiang country says, my Tang Empire can only do it. Tang Mu said softly, Old Pei, have you thought about the countless people in the Tang Empire? If we fight and the Jiang country's army enters, do you know how many people will die? Speaking of this, he walked in front of Marshal Pei. My Tang Empire lost. If we lose, we have to pay the price. Lost. In an instant, 2 streams of clear liquid flowed down Pei Xiaohu's body, the unyielding marshal. Chapter 143. War had always been cruel. The Tang Empire had started this war. If they won, they would naturally obtain countless benefits. However, the Tang Empire had lost. If they lost, they would have to pay the price. The Tang Empire had lost. At this moment, the iron-blooded commander in front of him clearly recognized this point. He could continue to fight, but countless soldiers and citizens of the Jiang Empire would die. Now, he still had a little capital to negotiate because the main force of the Tang Empire was still there. However, if he continued to fight, the Tang Empire would not have the qualifications to negotiate at all. Especially when the Jiang Empire's army entered the Tang Empire, the citizens of the Tang Empire would suffer. The scene suddenly quietened down. After a long time, Pei Xiaohu bowed slightly to Tang Mu. Let this old subject accompany the king to the Jiang Empire. Tang Mu sighed softly. Then I'll have to trouble you. Just like that, Yi Xian and the others headed towards the Jiang Empire with the tens of thousands of cavalrymen. The Tang cavalrymen were all looking at Yi Xian. Some were angry, some were unwilling, and some were filled with killing intent. Yi Xian. The entire Tang Empire was not defeated by the Jiang Empire, but by this young man in front of them. Pei Xiaohu glanced at Yi Xian with a complicated gaze. Why did the Jiang Empire have such a genius? Moreover, it was a genius who cared about the Jiang Empire. If the Tang Empire also had such a genius, the corner of Pei Xiaohu's mouth was somewhat bitter. The geniuses of the Tang Empire were all recruited by Kuraki College, and those who entered Kuraki College didn't care about their country at all. In their hearts, there was only Kuraki College and their own future. Country? Many people did not even have such a concept. Of course, he knew very well that the Tang Empire was not completely defeated by Yi Xian. The reason why the Tang Empire lost so miserably was because they were tricked by Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. This was because Kuraki Academy had vowed that they would deal with Yi Xian and then asked the Tang Empire for assistance. However, not only did they fail to destroy Yi Xian, they even provoked the geniuses of the Central Divine Region. They brought this upon themselves. Pei Xiaohu withdrew his thoughts and slowly closed his eyes. There was no point in thinking about anything else now. An hour later, Yi Xian and the others arrived at Two World City. Outside Two World City, Jiang Jiao was still dressed in her silver armor, and behind her were thousands of state of Jiang soldiers. When they saw Yi Xian, all the soldiers in Two Realms City erupted. State Scholar Yi. State Scholar Yi. On and within the city walls, countless people roared in anger. The deeds of Yi Xian and the others in the Tang Empire had already spread throughout the Jiang country. Excited. The whole of Jiang country was excited. In an instant, Yi Xian's name became a household name. It had even surpassed in Lanxiu. There was no one in the entire state of Jiang who did not know of state scholar Yi Xian. When she saw Yi Xian, the corners of Jiang Jiao's lips quirked up slightly. She directly walked up to Yi Xian and the others. Yi Xian leaped off his horse and was just about to speak when Jiang Jiao suddenly gave him a hug. She hugged him very tightly. Yi Xian's body stiffened slightly. Everyone was stunned. In the next instant, Ling Han and the others directly started to make a ruckus. A moment later, Jiang Jiao released Yi Xian. She did not hesitate in the slightest. She lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder and said, "Welcome home. Welcome home." Yi Xian's heart was a little complicated because this time, he had almost not been able to return. Jiang Jiao walked up to Pei Xiaohu, who was standing nearby. Pei Xiaohu was expressionless. As a prisoner, what could he say? Jiang Jiao suddenly said, "Come, invite Marshal Pei and the king of the Tang Empire into the city." Remember, treat them well, and do not show the slightest bit of neglect. Behind Jiangjiu, the thousands of soldiers parted to the sides. Tang Mu and Pei Xiaohu were invited into Two Realm City, but the soldiers were blocked outside the city. Just as Yi Xian and the others were about to enter the city, Lu Kuang suddenly said, "We won't be going in." Yi Xian and the others turned to look at Lu Kuang, and Lu Kuang looked at Yi Xian and said, "Before we came, we already had a mission to complete. Now it's time to go back." Yi Xian nodded slightly, and he took out a gold card. At this time, Lu Kuang suddenly shook his head and said, "No need. In the Tang Imperial Palace, we have already earned hundreds of millions of gold coins. It's a huge profit." As he said this, he turned to look at Lu Banzwang and said, "Go back with me." Lu Banzwang shook his head and said, "No." Lu Kuang sighed softly and said, "Can't you give in to Dad? It's not like you don't know his temper." Lu Banzwang said calmly, "I won't go back." Lu Kuang sighed again. He knew his sister's temper. If she said she wouldn't go back, then she definitely wouldn't go back. A moment later, he said softly, "Take good care of yourself." After that, he whistled. Very soon, over 20 goshawks appeared in the distant sky and landed in front of Two World City. Countless people fixed their eyes on the 20 goshawks at this moment. A nether passage realm demonic beast was still rare. Lu Kuang and the others flew onto the back of the eagle. He glanced at Lu Banzwang, but Lu Banzwang was expressionless and did not say anything. Lu Kuang felt helpless. Finally, he looked at Yi Xian. "Brother Yi, see you at the Central Divine Prefecture." Brother Yi. Without a doubt, he was willing to make friends with Yi Xian. In fact, under normal circumstances, no one would refuse to be friends with a swordsman. In the Central Divine Continent, strength and character were equally important when it came to making friends with others. Neither was dispensable. Yi Xian nodded. "See you in the future." Lu Kuang nodded slightly. Then he and his brothers behind him rode the goshawks and soared into the sky. Soon, they completely disappeared from the sight of Yi Xian and the others. The 9th mercenary group. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. These 20 people were all in the divine combination tier, and they were the kind that didn't rely on their strength. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly walked to his side. "They are still not the best of the Central Divine Prefecture." Yi Xian looked at Lu Banzwang, and Lu Banzwang said calmly, "The best, even a force like Kuraki Academy wouldn't dare to provoke them." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "Our bandit army will also be as powerful in the future." Lu Banzwang did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. "You don't believe me?" Lu Banzwang said softly, "Let's do our best." "Let's do our best." Yi Xian nodded. "Let's do our best and work hard together. We'll make a name for ourselves together." As he said this, he turned to Ling Han and the others. "Are you confident?" "Brother Yi, it's very difficult to survive in the Central Divine Prefecture. However, with Brother Yi and Big Sister here, we're all confident." Hearing this, everyone instantly laughed loudly. At this moment, Bai Zhe suddenly said, "Bandit Yi, I'm going back." Yi Xian looked at Bai Zhe, and Bai Zhe smiled bitterly. "This time, I forced my foster father to allow me to bring the demonic beasts. Now, I must bring these demonic beast brothers back. This is what I promised him." Yi Xian asked softly, "Do you want me to go back with you?" Bai Zhe hesitated and then said, "My foster father indeed wants to see you." Yi Xian smiled. "Then you can stay for half a day. We'll go back together tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I also want to discuss some business with your foster father. He'll be interested." Bai Zhe smiled bitterly. "My foster father isn't very easy to talk to." Yi Xian said, "That's fine. At worst, we'll just fight." Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian. "He's at the peak of the 10,000 techniques tier." Yi Xian said, "Pretend I didn't say anything." After saying this, he turned around and left. Bai Zhe. After Yi Xian and the others entered Two Realm City, they found that the city was empty. There were only soldiers and no commoners. At the side, Jiangjiu said, "When the Tang Empire attacked, I had already evacuated everyone in the city. Now, only the soldiers remain in Two Realm City." At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. But now, they can all return. Yi Xian nodded. That's for the best. Also, as for how to negotiate with the Tang Empire, you can decide for yourselves. Jiang Jiu said calmly, don't worry, we won't lose out. Destroy a country. The Jiang Empire actually didn't have the strength to destroy the Tang Empire. If they forcefully destroyed it, it would only cause the Jiang Empire to sink into the swamp of war. At that time, the Jiang Empire would suffer heavy losses, especially since the Jiang Empire still had two strong enemies, the Chu Empire and the Yu Empire. These two countries hadn't withdrawn their troops yet. But now, the Jiang Empire could free up its hands to deal with these two countries. In a spacious tent, Yi Xian, Ling Han, and the others sat around a table. Divide the spoils. Previously in the Tang Empire, they seized the treasures of the Tang Empire's Zhongmu Academy and some elites of Deyun Zhongmu Academy. Apart from that, there were also the treasures and money of some cultivators from all over Qing province, as well as some miscellaneous items. Of course, the most important thing was that they had looted the entire Tang Empire's national treasury. That was the national treasury. Everyone took out all the treasures that hadn't been divided before. In an instant, the entire tent was piled full of gold coins, spirit tools, supreme-grade spirit tools, spirit stones, supreme-grade spirit stones, jade-grade spirit stones, earth-grade martial arts techniques, gold, silver, jade. There was everything. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe were stunned. Meanwhile, Ling Han and the others were also excited, unable to suppress their excitement and agitation. This time, they had really struck it rich. Especially Yi Xian, he had a batch of supreme-grade spirit crossbows, a total of 30 crossbows, which could be used to build a crossbow team. It could be said that the Jiang Empire and the Tang Empire didn't have the ability to equip an army with such equipment, or in other words, even if they could, it would be a great blow to their vitality. After Lu Banzwang counted, they began to divide the spoils. Everyone's share was the same, but Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi took the initiative to withdraw, because they hadn't participated before. However, they still got a share, because if they hadn't rushed over with the demonic beast army, everyone wouldn't have been able to leave the Tang Empire. This time, it took a full hour to divide the spoils. In the end, Yi Xian's personal wealth was almost 500 million gold coins, 5 million supreme-grade spirit stones, 7 earth-grade low-grade martial arts technique scrolls, 5 low-grade cultivation technique scrolls, 21 supreme-grade spirit tools, 30 supreme-grade crossbows, and the rest of the miscellaneous items added together were worth at least tens of millions of gold coins. Right now, he could be said to be richer than some first-class aristocratic families. There were also quite a number of people like Lu Banzwang, each of them worth hundreds of millions. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly stood up, and everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Old Mo, bring 50 million gold coins to the 9th building head of the Tang Empire, and say thank you for their help. If he doesn't accept it, say it's for the friends of the drunken Immortal brothel. Also, please inform the 5th building head that I have something to discuss with him." As he spoke, he took a deep breath. Divine Combination Tier. We have money, we must all reach the Divine Combination Tier. We must also equip ourselves with the best equipment. Everyone must at least have a clear grade equipment. Divine Combination Tier. Chapter 144. Everyone gazed at Yi Xian. The Divine Combination Tier. They were all at the Nether Passage tier now. Indeed, this was already very strong, and it could be said that they were the top group in the territory of Azure County. However, was this enough? It was far from enough. Because their opponent was Kuraki Academy, the Dark World. Even though they'd heavily injured Kuraki Academy this time, the Dark World hadn't suffered any losses. Moreover, Kuraki Academy had only dispatched 20 Dao soldiers. To them, the deaths of 20 Dao soldiers wasn't a huge loss. Moreover, Azure County's Kuraki Academy was still there. There was still the Great Cloud Empire. This empire had sent a team of crossbows to target them. The sense of danger was still very strong. As long as Kuraki Academy and the Dark World were still alive, the matter would never end. Mo Yunqi immediately nodded when he heard Yi Xian, and then he turned around and left. Everyone gazed silently at Yi Xian. Yi Xian sat down and continued, "Since I've established a bandit mercenary group, then I'll do a good job. Now, I'll set a rule. All those who join my bandit mercenary group will share honor and disgrace together. Share life and death together. Share honor and disgrace together. Share life and death together." Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian, and then he nodded slightly. "All right." Everyone else nodded. Actually, they'd experienced so many battles of life and death in the Tang Empire, so they'd already shared life and death together. Yi Xian stood up. "All of you rest well and recuperate from your injuries. I'll prepare the rest." Meanwhile, Lu Banzwang suddenly said, "Remember to notify us if you want to buy something. We'll do our own things and we have to be clear about everything. Otherwise, it'll be a mess." Ling Han hurriedly nodded as well. "Big sister is right. It's good to have brothers, but we still have to be clear about things. Otherwise, some people might take everything for granted. Brother Yi, you have to understand this." Yi Li and the others nodded as well. They were well aware of Yi Xian's temper, and he was absolutely not a petty person. However, there were times when they really had to be clear about things. Blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't pay you. Stop daydreaming." After saying this, he turned around and left. Inside the tent, everyone looked at each other. Outside the tent, Yi Xian encountered Jiang Jiao. Jiang Jiao was still dressed in his silver armor, and looked as valiant as ever. Jiang Jiao was still dressed in his silver armor. Jiang Jiao of Jiang Jiao. On a quiet street, the two of them were walking slowly. The two of them didn't speak at first. They just walked like that. After walking for who knew how long, Jiang Jiao suddenly said, "Don't take such risks next time." Soldiers. Yi Xian had gone deep into the heart of the Tang Empire. She was dumbfounded when she first received the news. His first reaction was anger, because what Yi Xian was doing was too risky. His second reaction was anxiety. Therefore, she had sent countless spies to the Tang Empire to gather information. Fortunately, with the help of the drunken Immortal Inn, she was able to send troops to help at the critical moment. Yi Xian said softly, "I didn't think so much at that time." Speaking up to hear, he looked at Jiang Jiao. "Are there any movements from the Chu and Yu countries?" Jiang Jiao shook his head. "There's no movement." Yi Xian frowned. "What do you mean?" Jiang Jiao sneered. "The Tang Empire has fallen into such a situation, how could they still dare to make a move?" Yi Xian nodded. "What's your plan?" Jiang Jiao looked at Yi Xian. "What do you think?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "Naturally, we can't just let it go like this." Jiang Jiao said with a smile, "Of course. This battle isn't something they can start or withdraw from as they please." At this point, she paused. "You've done such a meritorious service for the state of Jiang, have you thought of any rewards?" Yi Xian was taken aback for a moment before he shook his head. "That's not necessary." Jiang Jiao rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. "I knew you'd be like this. I've already asked for the reward for you. You'll know when you return to Blue Waves Academy." Yi Xian was about to speak when a figure suddenly landed not far from Yi Xian and Jiang Jiao. This person was the 9th floor master of the state of Jiang. "No, she's already the 5th floor master." Seeing the 5th floor master, Jiang Jiao nodded. "You guys continue chatting." After speaking, she turned around and left. The 5th floor master walked in front of Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and smiled. "Nether Passage Realm. Congratulations, little friend." Yi Xian cupped his fists. "Senior, I have something to ask of you." The 5th floor master said seriously, "Little friend, please speak." Yi Xian said solemnly, "I want to break through to the Divine Combination Realm." Divine Combination Realm. The 5th floor master was silent. Yi Xian asked, "What's wrong?" The 5th floor master was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Divine Combination Pill." It was an extremely precious pill that contained precious 5 elemental spiritual energy. If a Nether Passage Realm expert were to consume it, there was a high chance that they would be able to use the 5 elemental spiritual energy to break through and reach the Divine Unity Realm. At this point he smiled bitterly. But it's very expensive. Very expensive. One pill costs at least 100 million gold coins. 100 million gold coins. Yi Xian was shocked. 100 million gold coins was not a small amount. Even some of the first-class families in the state of Jiang couldn't take out 100 million gold coins at once. The fifth floor master continued, moreover, this divine combination pill is very rare. If we can sell it properly, it's very possible to sell it for 130 million gold coins. At this point he looked at Yi Xian. If you need it, I can transfer 1 or 2 from the headquarters. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Senior, I need around 13 pills. 13 pills. The fifth floor master was stunned. A moment later, the fifth floor master smiled bitterly. Little friend, you're asking for too much. Yi Xian bowed slightly. Thank you for your trouble, senior. The fifth floor master fell silent for a long time. In the end he nodded. I will contact the headquarters and ask them to help me purchase the divine combination pills. As for whether I can collect all of them, the old man can't guarantee. However, the drunken immortal house will do its best. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Thank you. The fifth floor master smiled. We're all on the same side. There's no need to be so courteous. Yi Xian continued, Senior, there's one more thing. I need 13 bright grade spiritual weapons. If there's any defensive bright grade spiritual energy, I want them too. Bright grade spiritual weapons. The fifth floor master thought for a moment and nodded. It's easy as long as you have the money. However, I still need to purchase from the headquarters. Therefore, I need some time, around 10 days. 10 days? Yi Xian nodded. Alright, there's one more thing. Senior, the drunken immortal house and dark world might not let this matter rest. If they make any movements, I hope that you can help me investigate. In terms of intelligence, Blue Waves Academy was definitely inferior to the drunken immortal house. Not to mention Blue Waves Academy, even Jiang country was inferior. The fifth floor master smiled. That's naturally not a problem. All the spies of the drunken immortal house will keep an eye on Blue Waves Academy and Dark World. If they make any movements, the drunken immortal house will inform you immediately. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you. The fifth floor master shook his head. Little friend is too polite. I will contact the headquarters now. I hope that we can settle the matter of the pills and spiritual weapons as soon as possible. Goodbye. After speaking, he turned around and disappeared. After the fifth floor master left, Yi Xian returned to his tent. Then he entered the prison pagoda. Inside the pagoda, he sat cross-legged. Suddenly, the elegant spirit sword flew out from his body and landed in front of him. True sword. At this moment, the elegant spirit sword was already a true sword. The so-called true was actually the essence. What was essence? The essence of the sword. Not only the sword, all things had their own essence. True sword meant that the sword could already feel its own essence. Actually, humans could continuously evolve and improve. The sword was the same. This was a sword with life. When it reached a certain level, it would develop its own intelligence. At that time, this sword would reach a whole new level. When the exquisite spirit sword became a true sword, his battle power naturally rose by a large margin. It could be said that with this sword, he could even easily kill a God fusion stage expert. Of course, his strength didn't come entirely from this sword. Even without this sword, he could still kill a God fusion stage expert. It was just that with this sword, he could do it even more easily. This was the importance of equipment. And now, what he needed to do was to stabilize his realm. Because he broke through to High Sky Realm in a hurry, his realm was slightly unstable. What he needed to do now was to stabilize his realm. Only by stabilizing his realm would he dare to continue breaking through to Divine Unity Realm. Otherwise, even if he reached Divine Unity Realm, there would still be repercussions. Just like this, 2 days later, Yi Xian felt that he had adapted to the Nether Passage Realm and left the World Prison Pagoda. To Mount Mang. After bidding farewell to Lu Banzwang and the others, he and Bai Zhe led a group of demonic beasts straight to Mount Mang. Demonic beasts? There weren't many demonic beasts in the Qingzhou, but there were. Demonic beasts usually lived in the vast mountains and their relationship with humans wasn't good. However, humans and demonic beasts had always lived in harmony because both sides didn't dare to fight. In addition, there were world protectors above. Therefore, demonic beasts and humans could be said to live in harmony. And this time, Bai Zhe brought demonic beasts to the Tang Empire. It could be said that the surrounding countries were shocked, because this was the first time that demonic beasts participated in a war between humans. At the same time, the surrounding countries were also wary of the Jiang Empire, because if the Jiang Empire and the demonic beasts of Mount Mang joined forces, their strength would definitely be comparable to the Ning Empire. About 6 hours later, Yi Xian and Bai Zhe brought the group of demonic beasts to Mount Mang. As soon as they entered the territory of Mount Mang, the sky instantly darkened because the trees were too tall. Ordinary people standing under the trees and looking up, they couldn't even see the top of the trees. It could be described as covering the sky. Beside Yi Xian, Bai Zhe suddenly said, "Bandit Yi, my foster father isn't very easy to talk to." Yi Xian glanced at Bai Zhe. "Is your foster father really in the 10,000 Laws realm?" Bai Zhe nodded. "How can it be fake?" Yi Xian thought about his current strength. After a moment, he said seriously, "We are reasonable people. Don't worry, I am a person who respects my elders. He is my elder, so I won't fight with him. I will communicate with him properly." Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian and muttered, "You speak as if you can defeat him." P.S. Yesterday, a reader wished me a happy birthday at midnight. Then I suddenly woke up and realized that today is my birthday. Speaking of which, everyone might not be able to celebrate their birthday, especially in recent years. I am so sad. Today, I don't ask for monthly votes, but I ask for a blessing. Otherwise, even if he had the money, it would be difficult to find it in such a short time. Demon Monarch Mount Mang glanced at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly took out a golden card and handed it to Demon Monarch Mount Mang. "Senior, there are 100 million gold coins in this card. Consider it a gift from Bai Zhe and me." 100 million gold coins. Demon Monarch Mount Mang's expression immediately changed. 100 million gold coins was not a small amount. To Mount Mang, it was a huge fortune. One had to know that the entire Mount Mang might not even be able to produce 100 million gold coins. At the side, Bai Zhe was also somewhat shocked because he did not expect Yi Xian to take out 100 million gold coins to give Mount Mang. Demon Monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Why?" Yi Xian said sternly, "If not for Mount Mang's help this time, we would have died in the Tang Empire. I, Yi Xian, will forever remember this favor in my Blue Waves Academy." He had never felt that it was right for others to help him. If others helped him, he should always remember this favor. Moreover, he should repay them when he could. Kindness must be repaid, and enmity must be avenged. Demon Monarch Mount Mang was silent for a moment before saying, "Come in and have a seat. This chapter is not over, please continue." With that said, he turned and walked into the cave. Yi Xian handed the gold card and peach spirit fruits to Bai Zhe and gestured. Bai Zhe hesitated. "Bandit Yi, this." Yi Xian kicked Bai Zhe's butt. "What's with all the nonsense? Hurry up and send it over." Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian and grinned. "Alright, I'll listen to you, big brother." With that said, he quickly chased after Demon Monarch Mount Mang. Standing where he was, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Then he followed them inside. The cave was very large and spacious. Furthermore, there were some tools used by humans, which surprised Yi Xian. The three of them sat around the table. There was some food and wine on the table. Demon Monarch Mount Mang sized up Yi Xian. "Little Zhe said that you have something to discuss with me?" Yi Xian nodded. "I want to cooperate with Senior. My Blue Waves Academy wants to recruit a batch of demon beasts." "Recruit demon beasts." Demon Monarch Mount Mang narrowed his eyes. "Enslave?" As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere instantly tensed up. Yi Xian shook his head. No, it's students. If Mount Mang's demon beasts are in my Blue Waves Academy, they will be students of my Blue Waves Academy. They can study and cultivate with human students, and the cultivation resources they receive will be the same as students of my Blue Waves Academy. They are equal to human students in my Blue Waves Academy. Hearing that, Demon Monarch Mount Mang's expression changed. Students. In the territory of Qing Province, there were Blue Waves Academy and Kuraki Academy, but these two academies had never accepted demonic beasts as students. Even if there were some demonic beasts in the academy, they were slaves and basically weren't students. It could be said that these two academies looked down on demon beasts. In other words, the entire human race looked down on demon beasts. They felt that demon beasts were wild beasts or even animals. If demon beasts were not strong enough, they would have long disappeared from this world. And now, Yi Xian actually wanted to recruit demon beasts as students. This was something that had never happened before in the Qing province. Demon Monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian. Are you serious? Yi Xian nodded. I'm serious. If they enter my Blue Waves Academy, they will be a member of my Blue Waves Academy. I will treat them equally. Of course, seniors should know that I have a lot of enemies. My ambition is also quite big because I want to make Blue Waves Academy the best academy in Blue Firmament World. Therefore, if they enter my Blue Waves Academy, it will be an opportunity for them, an opportunity to improve, but it will also be accompanied by danger. Demon Monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian did not speak either. He had said everything he needed to say and was very frank. Now, it was up to Demon Monarch Mount Mang. At this moment, Bai Zhe suddenly said, Godfather, I think this is an opportunity for Mount Mang. Those brothers should go out and explore. The outside world is really big, and the people out there are really strong. After witnessing the strength of Ling Han and the others, Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi could be said to be deeply aware of their own shortcomings. They were really strong. However, Ling Han and the others were not the top in the Central Divine Continent. There were really many geniuses and monsters. A moment later, Demon Monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian. Are you sure you can treat them equally? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Not only that, I will vigorously nurture them and let them surpass their current selves. Demon Monarch Mount Mang said again, demonic beasts are wild and hard to tame. If they enter Blue Waves Academy, it is very likely that they will not be restrained and even act recklessly. How will you deal with them? Yi Xian smiled. As long as they can beat me, they can do anything they want. If they can't beat me, then they will obediently listen to me. Otherwise, they will be beaten by me. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. Demon Monarch Mount Mang was silent for a moment, then nodded. All right, Mount Mang will cooperate with Blue Waves Academy. What requirements do you have for the demonic beasts that want to enter Blue Waves Academy? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, it would be best if they are Nether Passage Realm demonic beasts. Demon Monarch Mount Mang stood up and walked out of the cave. Follow me. Yi Xian and Bai Zhe hurriedly followed. Outside the cave, Demon Monarch Mount Mang suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground. In an instant, the entire ground shook violently. Soon, the surroundings began to tremble. Soon, a large group of demonic beasts suddenly surrounded them. There were all kinds of demonic beasts. Demon Monarch Mount Mang swept his gaze across the area. Nether Passage Realm, step forward. As soon as he finished speaking, over 20 demonic beasts arrived not far from Demon Monarch Mount Mang. Yi Xian glanced at them. There were a total of 27 Nether Passage Realm demonic beasts. This was the elite force of Mount Mang. Demon Monarch Mount Mang looked at Yi Xian. There are a total of 27 demonic beasts. The rest are mostly Ascension Realm demonic beasts. Yi Xian nodded and walked in front of the group of demonic beasts. The group of demonic beasts also looked at Yi Xian, but there was no hostility in their eyes. Yi Xian looked around and finally chose 3 Ascension Realm demonic beasts. These 3 demonic beasts were at the peak of the Ascension Realm. Their auras were vigorous and showed signs of breaking through. 30 demonic beasts. Yi Xian looked at Demon Monarch Mount Mang. Demon monarch Mount Mang glanced at the demonic beasts and pointed at Yi Xian. From now on, all of you have to listen to his orders. If you are not convinced, challenge him now. Humans respected the strong, and it was even more so for demonic beasts. If Yi Xian wanted to recruit these powerful demonic beasts, he had to make them submit. It should be said that this was also a test from Demon Monarch Mount Mang for Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was not strong enough and monstrous enough, he would not let these demonic beasts go to Blue Wave's academy. In the field, the demonic beasts looked at each other. Finally, a demonic beast walked in front of Yi Xian. This demonic beast was shaped like a lion. It was huge and several meters tall. When it came in front of Yi Xian seemed too small compared to it. This demonic beast looked down at Yi Xian. Suddenly, it raised its paw and slapped at Yi Xian. The slap was like a small mountain pressing down. The powerful palm immediately caused the ground under Yi Xian's feet to crack. Bang! With a loud explosion, the demonic beast was sent flying. This time, it flew for a distance of several meters. All the demonic beasts were stunned. Soon they looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was still in the same place, not moving at all. A mysterious power slowly receded from Yi Xian's body. It was the power of the earth. He had used the power of the earth just now. If he did not use the power of the earth, he would not be able to crush his opponent with just his physical strength. If he used his sword, he would either die or be injured. The demonic beast could not withstand the slash of the exquisite sword. Yi Xian walked in front of the group of demonic beasts. Is there anyone who is unconvinced? The group of demonic beasts looked at each other, but no one came out. Yi Xian turned to look at Demon King Mang Mountain. Demon King Mang Mountain glanced at the demonic beasts. Take them away. Yi Xian did not stay in Mang Mountain for long. After 15 minutes, he and Bai Zhe left Mang Mountain with 30 demonic beasts. They went straight to Two Realm City to meet up with Ling Han and the others. On the way, Yi Xian's voice transmission stone suddenly rang. Yi Xian stopped. After a moment, his face instantly darkened. Bai Zhe looked at Yi Xian. What's wrong? Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. The Great Cloud Empire has sent an envoy. They said that the Great Cloud Emperor wants to take our Jiang country's 9th princess as a concubine. At this point, he put away the voice transmission stone and sneered. Damn it! Did they ask me? End of this chapter. Chapter 146. Concubine. Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian. It might not be that simple. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go back and take a look. Let's go. With that, Yi Xian and Bai Zhe led the group of demon beasts and sped up. On a mountain peak, a middle-aged man looked down at Yi Xian and the others. The middle-aged man was expressionless with his right hand behind his back. Behind him stood a young man. The middle-aged man was Mu Qingxian of Kuraki Academy, and the young man was Xiahou Dao. Soon Yi Xian, Bai Zhe, and the group of demon beasts disappeared into the distance. Mu Qingxian retracted his gaze and said softly, "Leave Azure Province immediately and head for the Divine Central Continent." Xiahou Dao looked at Mu Qingxian. "Master," Mu Qingxian shook his head. "You are the last hope of Great Cloud Continent's Kuraki Academy. Leave a spark." Xiahou Dao was somewhat shocked. "Master, it has already reached this point?" Mu Qingxian said softly, "Do you think the current situation is good?" Xiahou Dao said in a low voice, "Master, Kuraki Academy only lost 20 Dao soldiers. We are not in a hopeless situation." Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked off into the distance. Kuraki Academy hasn't admitted defeat, but he's just too much of a monster. Add to that the fact that he's befriended that group of geniuses from the Central Divine Prefecture, and the fact that the 10,000 Dharma realm can't act against them, they can sweep through the younger generation of the Azure Province. Xiahou Dao was somewhat puzzled. "Master, didn't the Great Cloud Empire agree to help?" Mu Qingxian said softly, "They helped because they sensed danger. Yi Xian has befriended this group of people and roped in these demon beasts. If this continues, the state of Zhang's strength will definitely increase greatly. They only have one goal in marrying the state of Zhang's 9th princess, and that is to rope her in first and then take the opportunity to control the state of Jiang. After all, the 9th princess prestige in the state of Jiang is extremely high. Xiahou Dao said mockingly, the state of Jiang is not stupid. How can it fall for this? Mu Qingxian said with a smile, if the state of Jiang agrees, then it's naturally good. If not, the Great Cloud Empire can rightfully target them. Xiahou Dao said in a low voice, Master, I don't understand. Why does the Great Cloud Empire want to get involved in this mess? Mu Qingxian smiled and said, balance. Great Cloud Empire has to maintain the balance of neighboring empires. Now that Jiang country has defeated Tang country so easily, if Great Cloud Empire doesn't suppress it, Jiang country will definitely rise. This isn't what Great Cloud Empire wants to see. At this point, he sneered, besides, Chu Nation and Yu Nation are probably trembling in fear now. If Jiang Nation refuses to marry the 9th princess, Great Cloud Empire will not only have an excuse to target Jiang Nation, but also take advantage of this opportunity to subdue Chu Nation and Tang Nation. King Kaoshan isn't simple at all. As he spoke, he walked up to Xiahou Dao and patted him lightly on the shoulder. What comes next is a truly vicious battle. The Central Divine Prefecture has already realized the severity of the situation here, and it's extremely likely that our Grand Cloud Granary Academy in Qingzhou will be used as cannon fodder. Leave with the hope of our academy. With that, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. In the same place, Xiahou Dao held his long saber and remained silent for a long time. Yi Xian, Bai Zhe, and the demonic beasts soon returned to Two Realm City. When the soldiers on the city wall saw Yi Xian, they immediately opened the gate and let him in. Not only that, but the soldiers on the city wall also saluted him. Yi Xian's prestige in Jiang country was very high now. After entering the city, Yi Xian asked Bai Zhe to settle the demonic beasts while he went to Jiang Jiu's tent. At this moment, Jiang Jiu was dealing with something. Jiang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian, "You're back?" Then, she lowered her head to deal with something. Yi Xian sat in front of Jiang Jiu. Did Great Cloud Empire send someone? Jiang Jiu nodded. They did. They said that Great Cloud Empire wants to take me as a concubine. Yi Xian asked, what did Jiang country say? Jiang Jiu stopped and looked at Yi Xian. What do you think? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, you should know their intention. Jiang Jiu said softly, do you know the strength of Great Cloud Empire? They are the strongest force in Azure Province. Whether it is Great Cloud Realm or Dark World, excluding the headquarters, they are inferior to them. Back then, their Black Flame army only used less than half a month to destroy a country at that time. Even Ning country's most powerful guard army is nothing in front of the Black Flame army. Yi Xian asked, Jiang country chose to compromise? Jiang Jiu chuckled, compromise is impossible. Even if I marry into Great Cloud Empire, they won't let Jiang country off. Moreover, this time, not only Great Cloud Empire, but also Kuraki College's headquarters and Dark World's headquarters. According to the intelligence I received, Kuraki College's headquarters and Dark World's headquarters are talking to Great Cloud Empire. They should have reached an agreement. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, how do we deal with it? Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian. Take down Chu and Yu countries first, at least cripple them. We can't let them be used by Great Cloud Empire. Chu and Yu countries. Yi Xian pondered and nodded, I understand. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the tent. Marshal, the emissary of Great Cloud Empire is here. Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian and smiled. It must be my imperial father who pushed them here. Let's go and meet them. Yi Xian nodded. Both of them immediately entered the tent. A eunuch was standing outside the tent. Behind the eunuch were 10 guards armed with daggers. All of them were in Nether Passage realm. The eunuch glanced at Jiang Jiu coldly. 9th princess, kneel down and receive the decree. Seeing this attitude, Yi Xian frowned. At this time, Jiang Jiu said with a smile, in the eyes of Great Cloud Empire, we are a small country, a barbarian. So they won't respect us. Then, she looked at the eunuch, am I right? The eunuch frowned. 9th princess, are you provoking me? Jiang Jiu shook his head with a smile, I dare not. Eunuch, please speak your mind. The eunuch walked to Jiang Jiao and sneered, What? Even the dignified princess of Jiang country doesn't know etiquette? Do you need me to teach you? Jiang Jiao chuckled, then looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian walked to the eunuch and opened his right hand, revealing a black crossbow. Yi Xian said, This is from Great Cloud Empire, right? The eunuch glanced at the crossbow in Yi Xian's hand and frowned, Supreme Grade Crossbow. Then he looked at Yi Xian with undisguised killing intent in his eyes. Sure enough, those people have died in your hands. How dare you? At this time, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. But, along with the clear sound of a slap, the eunuch's entire body was directly sent flying. This time, he flew over 100 feet away. Seeing Yi Xian suddenly attack, the guards were about to attack, but at this time, a flying sword slashed across the field. A guard's head flew off instantly, blood spurting out like a fountain. The rest of the guards were dumbfounded. He was killed in an instant? Yi Xian ignored the guards and walked to the eunuch not far away. I won't kill you. Go back and tell Great Cloud Empire not to play these tricks. If you want to fight, then fight. Now get lost. The eunuch stared at Yi Xian. You lowly person, you will pay for what you did today. You? Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. He slashed with his sword. The eunuch's head flew off instantly. All the spectators were stunned. Yi Xian sheathed his sword and turned to look at the guards. Now, you're here to bring a message. Do you have anything to say? The group of guards took a deep look at Yi Xian, then turned and left. If they said anything at this moment, they would undoubtedly be courting death. Yi Xian looked at Jiang Jiao. Now, Jiang country has no choice but to fight. There won't be any other voices. With that he turned and left. Jiang Jiao looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. How could she not know that Yi Xian didn't kill to show off, but to let the people of Jiang country know that they could only fight? Previously, some ministers in the imperial court were in favor of marrying the 9th princess because Great Cloud Empire couldn't afford to offend them. But now, with Yi Xian's sword, no one in Jiang country would talk about marriage anymore. Everyone could only choose to fight. Otherwise, they would kill Yi Xian and go to Great Cloud Empire to beg for forgiveness. But now, given Yi Xian's prestige, who would dare to touch him? It could be said that Yi Xian's sword saved Jiang Jiao a lot of trouble. Great Cloud Empire. Jiang Jiao turned to look at the horizon with a trace of worry in her eyes because things were getting more and more troublesome. Great Cloud Empire. It was the largest power in Azure Province, as well as the headquarters of Kuraki Academy and the Assassins of Dark World. How could Jiang country deal with these three powers? However, Jiang country had no choice. Yi Xian and Jiang country were already tied together. Even if they sent Yi Xian to these three powers, they wouldn't let Jiang country go. Or rather, it would be worse. With Yi Xian around, the three forces would still be fearful. After all, Yi Xian had a sword Immortal backing him up. No matter how hard the three forces tried, they would not dare to send out the 10,000 Dharma realm. Without Yi Xian, 5 or 6 people from the 10,000 Dharma realm could easily destroy the Jiang country. In any case, things were getting more and more serious. In a tent, Yi Xian gathered Lu Ban's Wang and the others, and they sat around a table. Yi Xian glanced at them and said, I've already asked the drunken Immortal in to purchase some God Union pills and bright grade equipment. They will arrive in 8 or 9 days, so there are about 8 days left. You guys should prepare. Oh, right, if you have God Union pills, are you confident that you can break through to the Divine Union tier? We've been stuck at the Nether Passage tier for a long time. If we have God Union pills, we'll definitely be able to break through to the Divine Union tier. Yi Xian nodded and said, That's good. Just at this moment, a shrill scream suddenly came from outside the tent. Yi Xian and the others directly appeared outside the tent. At this time, Jiang Jiao arrived in front of Yi Xian and the others. All around, countless soldiers surrounded Yi Xian and the others, protecting Yi Xian and the others. What's going on? Yi Xian asked. At this moment, a group of soldiers carried a dozen or so corpses to Jiang Jiao. Jiang Jiao's expression was dark, and he said, They're all generals of my army, assassins of the Dark Realm. As she said this, she raised her head and looked into the distance. They've begun to move. Just at this moment, 15 meters to the right of Yi Xian, the head of a soldier suddenly flew into the air. Without any warning, everyone present was astonished. Yi Xian appeared beside that soldier, yet he didn't discover anything. It's the Dark Realm Dao soldiers. Nearby, Lu Banzwang said in a low voice, elite-level Dark Realm Dao soldiers. Lu Banzwang had just finished speaking when the heads of 3 soldiers suddenly flew into the air from 6 meters away. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. You guys should be the ones who must be careful. Yi Xian replied, I know, I will go and discuss with them. You should immediately inform the imperial capital and ask the emperor to send someone here. With that he turned around and left the tent. Yi Xian returned to his tent. He sat cross-legged on the ground and entered the World Prison Pagoda. At this moment, a piece of paper floated out from the entrance. On it was a small paw print. Yi Xian was speechless. He was speechless. Yi Xian was speechless. He was really speechless. Most of the time, he really could not understand what the god on the second floor meant. It was just a paw print. Who could understand it? Another piece of paper floated out. There was an additional palm on the paper. This palm was not the cat claw from before, but a human palm. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. God, can't you speak? Boom. At this moment, the second floor suddenly shook violently. A powerful force directly sent Yi Xian flying. Bang! Yi Xian crashed onto the ground. At this moment he felt as though his entire body was about to fall apart. Yi Xian buried his head on the ground and wailed in his heart. This was 2F** king bullying. At this moment, another piece of paper floated out. On the paper was a human's mouth. There was also an unknown mouth. In between the human's mouth and this unknown mouth, there was a small symbol. Behind the unknown mouth, there was a symbol. What the F***ck did this mean? Yi Xian did not want to live anymore. At this moment, the second floor suddenly shook violently. Yi Xian quickly got up. Let's talk nicely. I'll study it. After saying that, he quickly picked up the paper to study it. After a while, his face suddenly darkened. Because he roughly understood the meaning of this piece of paper. The guy on the second floor was asking him why he did not speak its language. Simply put, the guy on the second floor should not be able to speak the human language. Not from this world? Yi Xian was puzzled. Another piece of paper floated out. On the paper, there was a claw overlapping with a human palm. Overlapping? Yi Xian frowned and thought for a long time. At this moment, the second floor suddenly shook again. Yi Xian's face changed and he quickly said, I understand. It stopped on the second floor. Yi Xian said cautiously, You mean you want to merge with me? Or you want to use my body to come out? At this moment, another piece of paper floated out. On the paper, there was a square root symbol. Yi Xian, possession. This word came to Yi Xian's mind. Yi Xian quickly shook his head. Oh no. Possession? It was scary just thinking about it. In the past, he had heard that some powerful experts would seize control of the body. If the guy on the second floor wanted to do that, it definitely wouldn't work. Another piece of paper floated out. Just like this, Yi Xian communicated with the guy on the second floor. After about half an hour, Yi Xian was so tired that he sat on the ground. It was really too tiring. Especially if he answered incorrectly, the god on the second floor would make a move. It was too much of a bully. He tried to resist, but he really couldn't beat him. Finally, Yi Xian glanced at the entrance to the second floor. How about this? According to our previous agreement, you can come out twice in a month. You can come out on your own once, and I can ask to come out the other time. Is that okay? After a while, a piece of paper floated out from the second floor. On the paper was a small square root symbol. Seeing this, Yi Xian immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to agree, but he had no choice. This guy on the second floor was not a kind person. If he didn't agree, he didn't know what this guy would do. He really couldn't afford to offend him now. Yi Xian left the prison pagoda and went to Lu Banzwang's tent. Lu Banzwang was eating flatbread and had a green onion in her left hand. Yi Xian sat in front of Lu Banzwang. Are there any assassin organizations like the Dark World in the Central Plains? Lu Banzwang paused. After a long time, she nodded. Yes. Yi Xian quickly asked, can you invite them? Lu Banzwang shook her head. No. Why? Yi Xian didn't understand. Lu Banzwang glanced at Yi Xian and said, we can't invite them. Moreover, those assassins are insatiably greedy. It's easy to invite them in, but difficult to send them away. We can only deal with this matter ourselves. Yi Xian fell silent. He wasn't afraid of those assassins. With the sword eye, those assassins didn't dare to approach him. He also discovered that as long as those assassins showed themselves, their battle prowess wasn't very strong. The strength of these assassins lay in their unpredictability. Most importantly, these assassins weren't targeting him, but the soldiers of the Jiang nation. This was the most hurtful thing. In fact, it wasn't just these soldiers. Ling Han and the others were also in danger. Right now, Ling Han and the others were all gathered together. They didn't dare to separate because it was really too dangerous. At this moment, a voice traveled over from outside the drunken Immortal Inn. Young friend, please come out for a gathering. The fifth floor master. Yi Xian faltered and then walked out of the tent with Lu Banzwang. Outside the tent, the fifth floor master smiled faintly. Then, with a tap of his finger, a storage ring appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he said, I've gathered everything that young friend needs. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He asked, Senior, why is it so fast? The fifth floor master smiled and said, Young friend, you might not know this, but after learning that young friend is in urgent need, the second floor master of the Drunken Immortal Inn personally issued orders to the various Drunken Immortal Inns of the Central Divine Continent, ordering them to search for what young friend needs at all costs. That's why it's so fast. Hearing this, Yi Xian clasped his hands in greeting to the fifth floor master, and said, I can't thank you enough. I, Yi Xian, will truly remember this favor. After saying this, he looked at Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang nodded, and then called Ling Han and the others over. It wasn't long before they distributed the gold coins to the fifth floor master. The fifth floor master didn't refuse, and accepted the gold coins. Then, he tapped with his finger, and a pure white alchemical pill bottle appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. God Union Pill. Ling Han and the others were slightly excited when they saw these alchemical pills. That was because with these God Union pills, they would be able to break through to the Divine Union tier right away. If they didn't have these pills, then they would need at least 2 to 3 years to break through to the Divine Union tier, or perhaps even longer. At this moment, the fifth floor master tapped again, and a storage ring appeared in front of Ling Han and the others. Everyone looked at the fifth floor master, and the fifth floor master smiled and said, There is a clear grade spirit tool in the storage ring, and it was purchased according to your requirements. However, it's best to use it after you reach the Divine Union tier. That way, the effects will be even greater. Yi Xian looked at Ling Han and the others and said, Go to the tent and consume it. Banzwang and I will stand guard for you. The fifth floor master hesitated for a moment, and then said, Young friend, it might be very dangerous to break through now. Yi Xian shook his head and said, We won't have time after this, and they won't give us time either. The earlier we break through, the better. The fifth floor master thought for a moment, and then nodded. That's true. He hesitated for a moment, and then said, Young friend, there's a message from the Central Divine Continent. This time, the Central Divine Continent's Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm have started to target you. Yi Xian smiled and said, What a great reputation. The fifth floor master said seriously, Young friend, you have a senior sword immortal behind you, so how could they dare to underestimate you? They have allied with the Great Cloud Empire, and the three forces have joined forces. Young friend, you and the Jiang country should be extremely careful. Yi Xian nodded and said, Thank you for the reminder, senior. The fifth-floor master nodded and said, "That's right, the drunken Immortal Inn has sent 30 Dao soldiers here, and they will arrive by tomorrow at the latest." Lu Banzwang and the others were slightly moved when they heard this. The drunken Immortal Inn was determined to support Yi Xian. Actually, this was normal, because the drunken Immortal Inn had already bet too much on Yi Xian and the mysterious woman. Now they wouldn't stop, and they would fight to the end. Yi Xian clasped his fists at the fifth-floor master and said, "I'll definitely return the favor in the future." The fifth-floor master shook his head slightly and said, "To be more realistic, the drunken Immortal Inn does indeed want to rope you in, but it's not completely like that. There is indeed friendship involved. I won't say much, so take care of yourself, young friend." After saying this, he turned around and vanished on the spot. Yi Xian looked at Ling Han and the others. Ling Han and the others were just about to enter the tent, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Go outside the city." Everyone looked at Yi Xian, and they were all confused. A cold smirk appeared at the corners of Yi Xian's lips. "I want to break through right under their noses, and I want them to stop you." Ling Han hesitated, and then said, "Big brother, isn't this too crazy?" Yi Xian grinned and said, "I want to be crazy, and I want to play with my life. Don't worry, even if I have to die, the big brother, will be the first to die." As he said this, he waved his hand and said, "Leave the city." Everyone exchanged a look, and then followed Yi Xian out of Two Realm City. In an empty space outside the city, Ling Han, Mo Yunqi, and the others sat cross-legged on the ground after consuming the god-congealing pill. Not far away, Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang stood. Yi Xian pointed the spirit-elegant sword at the ground. He looked around and grinned. "Don't hide. Come, I beg you, do me." Wang. A sword cry resounded through the sky. P.S. Thank you for all the readers' blessings and monthly votes yesterday. Thank you so much. I'm temporarily first in the monthly votes, and this is the result of everyone's hard work. No matter if it's Sword Realm or Venerable Sword, no one has ever been first in the monthly votes. So, I won't beat around the bush. I want to ask for monthly votes. Friends who don't have monthly votes, please leave a message and praise me well. Praise me for my handsomeness. There's no limit to the number of words. If you praise me well, I'll increase the quality, and even maybe there's a mystery prize. Come on, start praising me. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 148. The battlefield was silent. Yi Xian stood in front of Ling Han and the others with the Spirit Elegance sword in his hand, which exuded a cold sword light. It was a sharp display. Yi Xian and the sword in his hand gave off such a feeling, as if it could even pierce a hole in the sky. Not far to the right of Yi Xian was Lu Banzwang. Lu Banzwang's eyes were closed, and she looked like an old monk in meditation. Actually, she was a little sleepy and wanted to sleep. And on the other side, on the city wall, was Jiang Jiao and a group of soldiers. Jiang Jiao was still dressed in silver armor. She just looked at Yi Xian below, and as she looked, she suddenly smiled. One smile could charm hundreds. Below the city wall, the moonlight was weak, and only blurry figures could be seen. It could be said that this was the best time for the killers to strike. In this kind of environment, they were definitely like tigers that had grown wings. However, it was strangely quiet below the city wall, and no one made a move. Because this was too abnormal. Logically speaking, Yi Xian and the soldiers of the Jiang country should be very careful when Ling Han and the others broke through. But now, Yi Xian openly allowed Ling Han and the others to break through outside the city, and no soldiers came to help guard. This was very abnormal. There had to be something wrong. For a moment, the killers in the dark did not make a move. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. Under the moonlight, Ling Han and the others broke through to the divine combination tier without any scruples. And they did not have any scruples at all. Because they believed in Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang. Yi Xian swung the Spirit Elegance sword lightly with his right hand. The Spirit Elegance sword was instantly suffused with rays of resplendent sword light. He looked around. There were some people hiding in the dark. However, These people did not dare to come too close. Obviously, after he killed a Dark World Dao soldier previously, these killers were still a little fearful of him. At this time, Yixian suddenly walked to Lu Banzwang's side. Although Lu Banzwang was standing ramrod straight, his head was slightly drooping, and he was snoring. Yixian's face was full of black lines. He lightly pulled on the corner of Lu Banzwang's clothes. "Don't sleep, be more serious." Lu Banzwang pursed his lips and ignored Yixian, continuing to snore. Yixian was speechless. Why was this woman so unreliable? Feeling helpless, Yixian walked to the other side. Seemingly bored, he suddenly started practicing his swordsmanship. His sword techniques were very simple, just stabbing, lifting, chopping, and slicing. These ordinary sword techniques became extraordinary under his control. He was now a Sword Dao Grandmaster, and he had his own unique understanding and grasp of the sword, especially when it came to deciding life and death with one sword. Deciding life and death with one sword was a kind of Sword Dao belief. My sword will take your life. How domineering was that? How confident was this swordsman? To put it bluntly, he was confident. If the swordsman did not have confidence in himself, this strike would have been weak and harmless. Confidence was also a kind of Sword Dao, or rather, it was a part of Sword Dao. Thinking of this, Yixian suddenly felt his entire body relax, and the exquisite sword in his hand trembled violently. Then, it suddenly broke free from his hand and soared into the sky. Everyone in the square looked at the exquisite sword. The exquisite sword left streaks of sword gleam in the sky as it shuttled through the air. The sword could communicate with people. Any of Yixian's thoughts could affect the exquisite sword in his hand. Swordsman. On the city wall, everyone looked at the Lingxiu sword with excitement. That was the swordsman of the country of Jiang. If this chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. Jiang Jiao's eyes also had a strange glint. At this moment, Yixian suddenly opened his palm from afar. The exquisite sword fell from the sky like a bolt of lightning and landed steadily in Yixian's palm. Holding the exquisite sword, Yixian suddenly looked around and roared, "Who dares to fight me? Who dares to fight me?" The surroundings were silent, and there was no movement at all. Yixian pointed his sword towards the darkness in the distance and said fiercely, "I want to fight you. I want to kill." Everyone on the city wall was speechless. There was still no movement at all below the city wall. Yixian suddenly loosened his palm, and the exquisite sword turned into a sword gleam and stabbed into the ground nearby. Then, he took a dozen steps forward and opened his arms. "Come, I don't need a sword. Please hit me." Just as he finished speaking, a man walked out from the darkness in the distance. The man was in his 20s and wore a black robe with a white background. He was handsome. The man walked in front of Yixian and sized up Yixian. Then he said, "Qingzhou Martial Leaderboard." Yixian suddenly disappeared on the spot. The man's pupils constricted. He sprinted forward and waved his palm. A dazzling palm gleam vibrated out from the center of his palm. At this moment, Yixian's fist arrived. It was a ferocious punch. Bang! As soon as their palms and fists collided, both the man and Yixian retreated repeatedly at the same time. But it wasn't long before both of them stopped at the same time. The man glanced at Yixian. In the next moment, his figure suddenly became illusory. In the blink of an eye, an afterimage flashed and charged straight at Yixian. In the distance, Yixian slowly clenched his right hand into a fist. The ground beneath his feet instantly collapsed. At the same time, his right sleeve was instantly shattered into pieces. His entire right arm bulged up while his veins were exposed, and it was an extremely shocking sight. After a moment of silence, Yixian suddenly smashed his fist forward. A strand of monstrous aura and battle intent surged out from his fist like a volcanic eruption. "I'll smash your head with a single punch." Bang! An explosion resounded abruptly, and then the man retreated explosively over 30 m away. As soon as he stopped moving, the ground beneath his feet instantly cracked apart, and then the cracks spread towards the surroundings. In an instant, The area in an area of over 10 m around him had cracked into a spiderweb. The man wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he raised his head to gaze at Yi Xian, who stood nearby. You really do cultivate in both the sword and martial arts. You. Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. The man's pupils constricted, and then he flashed backwards. As soon as he dodged, the ground beneath him had exploded into a deep hole. Moreover, he hadn't even stopped moving when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, Yi Xian raised his right leg and swept it towards the man. The powerful gale from this kick tore apart the clothes on the man's upper body. The man's expression changed drastically. Because he'd lost the initiative, he was unable to gather force, and he could only raise his right arm to block. Bang! The man crashed to the ground over 30 m away, and as soon as he landed, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward. This charge was like a cheetah pouncing on its prey, and it was extremely swift. However, Yi Xian suddenly stopped when he was around 1.5 m away from the man, and then he turned around and smashed his fist forward. Bang! In front of Yi Xian, a silver arrow was smashed into pieces. But he was pushed back dozens of feet. Not only that, but his entire fist was cracked. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. In the distant darkness, a person was aiming at him with a bow and arrow. On the other hand, the man behind him had already retreated over 30 m away, and he'd completely distanced himself from Qin Shi. The man stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and there was dense fear in his eyes. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stretched out his right hand, and the spirit elegant sword flew out from the ground in the distance before it descended into his hand. The expression of the man behind him instantly changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he was about to retreat. However, Yi Xian had already arrived in front of him at this moment. A single sword strike to decide life and death. When he saw this sword strike, the man was instantly filled with despair. However, he still had the desire to live. At this critical moment, the profound energy within his body surged madly, and in the blink of an eye, he suddenly slapped his right palm forward. An Earth-rank martial technique. As soon as this palm appeared, the ground started to crack inch by inch. It could be said that even an ordinary expert at the divine conglomerate realm would find it difficult to withstand this palm strike. However, as soon as Yi Xian's sword arrived, the spirit elegant sword directly pierced through the man's entire right arm, and the man instinctively wanted to retreat. However, at this moment, Yi Xian slashed horizontally with his sword. The man's head instantly flew into the air, and fresh blood sprayed everywhere. It was extremely bloody. At the moment his head fell to the ground, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and opened his eyes. Two rays of sword light shot out, and a silver arrow in front of him was instantly shattered by the sword light. Yi Xian gestured with his right hand, and the spatial ring on the man's corpse instantly flew into his palm. There were actually 3 supreme-grade spirit artifacts and over 100,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. There were even over 7 million gold coins. He had made a small fortune. Putting away the spatial ring, Yi Xian turned around and looked into the distance. He could feel that in the darkness, there was a person aiming a bow and arrow at him. It should be said that there was more than one person in the darkness. The Dark Realm and Kuraki Academy would definitely not give up, because if Ling Han and the others reached the divine conglomerate tier, it would undoubtedly be very, very disadvantageous to them. This was something that Yi Xian was also very clear about. Thus, he knew that the Dark Realm, Kuraki Academy, and even the Great Cloud Empire would soon make their move. And he had no choice but to face them head-on. After Yi Xian put away the spatial ring, he walked to Lu Banzwang's side. Lu Banzwang was still sleeping, and she was really sleeping, not pretending. This was also the reason why Yi Xian was speechless. This heart was not just an ordinary kind of heart. As Yi Xian stopped, the surroundings once again quieted down, and only the howling of the cold wind could be heard. Meanwhile, the auras of Ling Han and the others were becoming stronger and stronger. Ling Han and the others were all elites at the peak stage of the Nether Passage tier, so there was definitely no problem in terms of talent and foundation. After obtaining the Divine Conglomerate Pill, it would definitely be no problem for them to reach the divine conglomerate tier. Of course, the biggest problem was whether they could live to break through to the divine conglomerate tier. Yi Xian glanced at Ling Han and the others, his right hand slowly tightening around the spirit elegant sword in his hand. If everyone really couldn't withstand it and died, then he, Yi Xian, would be the first to die. Time passed bit by bit, and it was almost dawn. It was the darkest before dawn. Right now, it could be said that one could not even see their own fingers in front of them. Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang stood in front of Ling Han and the others, their faces expressionless. Suddenly, there was a slight movement in the darkness in the distance. Yi Xian lightly pulled on the corner of Lu Banzwang's clothes with his right hand. "Big sister, wake up, there's going to be a fight." Lu Banzwang pushed Yi Xian's hand away and muttered, "Give me 10 more flatbread." Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines. F***CK, was she talking in her sleep? Sensing that something was slowly approaching, Yi Xian hurriedly pulled on Lu Banzwang's sleeve again. "Customer, your flatbread is here." Lu Banzwang suddenly opened his eyes. Yi Xian, end of this chapter. Chapter 149. Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian. "Where's De Bing?" Yi Xian. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly turned to look into the distance. In the next instant, she suddenly leaped, and then slammed her palm onto the ground. The entire ground shook violently, and something was sent flying in the darkness. At this moment, Lu Banzwang suddenly raised her head. In the next instant, she suddenly crossed her arms in front of her to block. With a muffled sound, Lu Banzwang retreated a few meters. She had just stopped when the ground beneath her feet instantly collapsed. Lu Banzwang turned to look at Yi Xian. "You're from the divine middle continent, be careful." After saying this, she suddenly charged forward. In the darkness, there was a sudden explosion, and soon, Lu Banzwang returned to her original spot. And at this moment, Yi Xian's brow suddenly furrowed, because he felt that there were several dozen shadows charging towards Ling Han and the others. They were all top-notch assassins. Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot, and in that instant, endless power of the earth instantly gathered around his body. In the next instant, the spirit elegant sword in his hand suddenly flew out. Several meters away. An assassin's head was instantly pierced by the sword, and blood splattered everywhere. On the city wall, Jiang Jiao suddenly said, "Attack!" She had just spoken when close to 100 soldiers suddenly charged out of the city with long spears and shields in their hands. These 100 people quickly charged around Yi Li and the others. They did not take the initiative to attack, but instead surrounded Ling Han and the others, using their shields to form an iron bucket formation. If it was a one-on-one battle, they would definitely not be a match for these assassins, but if it was a battle, they were completely unafraid of these assassins. There was still a huge difference between soldiers and assassins. Moreover, with Yi Xian holding them back, these soldiers were even more unafraid of these assassins, because Yi Xian's sword basically killed instantly. Wherever the spirit elegant sword went, someone would definitely die. Even an elite of the divine combination tier could not block Yi Xian's sword. It itself had 2 sword intents, and it was also added with the power of the earth. Most importantly, it was a true sword. Even if it was a light-grade spirit weapon, the spirit elegant sword could easily shatter it. Furthermore, most of these assassins were only carrying supreme-grade spirit weapons. As soon as the 2 sides clashed, 5 to 6 assassins had already fallen. Right at this moment, an afterimage suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Boom! A loud explosion rang out, and Yi Xian retreated over 100 feet. He raised his head and saw a middle-aged man slowly walking towards him. Not a young man. This was not the main point. The main point was that he was dealing with a Divine Unity Realm cultivator, not a 10,000 Laws Realm cultivator. Furthermore, the person in front of them was clearly not an ordinary Divine Combination Realm cultivator. Those who had been stuck in the Divine Combination Realm for countless years were undoubtedly extremely terrifying. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and did not waste any time. His figure trembled as he charged directly towards Yi Xian. Wherever he passed, the ground began to crack and shatter inch by inch. At the same time, the sound of explosions rang out incessantly. His body tore through the air. Yi Xian tightened his grip on the spirit elegance sword in his right hand. After a moment of silence, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. One sword to decide life and death. Right now, he could not afford to be delayed at all. He had to end the battle quickly. Otherwise, the group of soldiers would undoubtedly become very dangerous. In front of Yi Xian, the middle-aged man suddenly clenched his fists while he was running. In an instant, a terrifying fist force surged out of his body like a breached dam. At the same time, his clothes suddenly bulged up, and on his fists, the light from his fists was as dazzling as the sun. As the fist struck, the sword arrived. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out. Yi Xian and the middle-aged man collided and separated. Yi Xian retreated rapidly, and the middle-aged man in front of him also retreated rapidly. Every step they retreated caused the ground to crack, and the scene in front of them was a mess. Very soon, the two of them stopped. The moment they stopped, Yi Xian charged out once again. This was the benefit of having a strong physical body. It could withstand great power. When he saw Yi Xian charging directly at him, the middle-aged man's expression instantly changed. Because he still hadn't completely dispersed the impact from before, and his body was still shaking incessantly as if his internal organs had been torn apart. However, Yi Xian actually seemed to be completely fine. The middle-aged man didn't have the time to think. He suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground, and his entire body charged out like an arrow that had left the bow. He relied on the momentum of his charge to clench his right hand into a fist, and then a powerful fist force surged out from his fist. Due to the force being too strong and coupled with the impact from before, his entire right hand actually split apart at the moment he converged his strength. At this moment, the middle-aged man couldn't care so much because if he was unable to withstand this strike, then he might die. The two of them collided head-on once more, and neither of them backed down. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! A figure suddenly flew out, and it was the middle-aged man. Yi Xian was just about to follow up with another attack when he suddenly turned around to look towards the right. Over a dozen soldiers from the kingdom of Jiang had fallen to the ground not too far away. Yi Xian's expression instantly became ferocious when he witnessed this scene, and then his figure shook and floated towards the distance. At the same time, a sword slashed through the air. An assassin's head suddenly flew into the air over 30 m away. It was an instant kill. It was an instant kill. The Dao soldiers from the dark dimension were shocked when they saw Yi Xian attack them, because Yi Xian was able to accurately locate where they were hiding. If an assassin lost this ability, then their strength would plummet greatly. The middle-aged man who fought Yi Xian just now took a deep and long glance at Yi Xian, and then he turned around and left. I can't fight him. He'd thought that he had a chance to kill Yi Xian and obtain a huge reward because he was very close to the Dharma realm. However, only now did he realize that even if he was halfway into the Dharma realm, he might not be able to defeat Yi Xian. Even though Yi Xian's head was very valuable, his own head was even more valuable. The middle-aged man decisively chose to leave. At the very least, it wasn't too late. Jiang Jiao glanced at the sky and spoke softly, "It's almost time." Hold on. The sky was about to brighten. So long as dawn arrived, then these assassins wouldn't dare to attack in such a fearless manner. Die! Right at this moment, Yi Xian's furious howl suddenly resounded from below the city, and then a strand of snow-white sword chi flashed like a bolt of lightning. A black-clothed assassin was instantly annihilated. However, the soldiers from the kingdom of Jiang were on the verge of being unable to hold on any longer. Meanwhile, Jiang Jiao suddenly leaped down from the city wall. The expressions of the soldiers on the city wall changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and it didn't take long for them to charge out of the city. Jiang Jiao suddenly turned around and roared furiously. "Stand down!" These soldiers were all ordinary soldiers, and they were no match for these assassins at all. It could be said that they were truly seeking death by coming out. If the two sides were fighting head-on, these soldiers might still be able to put up a fight due to their advantage in numbers. However, it was nighttime now, and they would only be slaughtered into powder if they came out. However, these soldiers didn't stop. Instead, they all arrived in front of Jiangjio. Jiangjio glanced at them and roared angrily, "Hurry up and return to the city." Countless soldiers suddenly knelt down on one knee. "We are willing to live and die with the martial and state scholar Yi." Jiangjio glanced at the kneeling soldiers in front of her and slowly closed her eyes. Right at this moment, Yi Xian, who was nearby, suddenly said, "Little Jiao, take them into the city, hurry up." Jiangjio turned around to look at Yi Xian, who was nearby. At this moment, Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang were already surrounded, and those elite soldiers who were protecting them were also almost unable to hold on. After all, they weren't facing soldiers, but rather elite assassins from the divine middle continent. If it weren't for Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang constantly restraining them, these soldiers would have long since been wiped out. And among the group of people who were surrounding Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang, some were assassins and some weren't. Moreover, new people were constantly joining in. It was obvious that they had rushed over from various places. Jiangjio's fists were tightly clenched, and she glared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly roared angrily, "Take them into the city." These ordinary soldiers posed no threat to these assassins in this kind of darkness. Coming here would only be sending them to their deaths. In the distance, Jiangjio took a deep look at Yi Xian, then turned around and walked into the city, roaring angrily, "Follow me." Under Jiangjio's lead, the soldiers of the Jiang country returned to the city walls. On the city walls, Jiangjio glared at Yi Xian below. The soldiers on the city walls were also staring at Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang below. None of them were afraid of death, but they really couldn't help. Helpless. They were really helpless. Especially Jiangjio. With her strength, she could help, but she couldn't go. As the commander-in-chief of the three armies, every single word and action of hers was related to all the soldiers in Two World City. So, the consequences would be extremely severe if anything were to happen. Moreover, she was unable to help at all. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and Yi Xian slashed down instinctively. Bang! Yi Xian retreated over 30 m along with his sword. The expressions of everyone on the city walls instantly became heavy when they witnessed this scene. A man stood not too far away from Yi Xian. The man was around the age of 20, wore black embroidered clothes, had slanted brows and starry eyes. He held a spear in his hand. The body of the spear was pitch black, but the tip of the spear was snow white, and it emanated a ghastly glow and coldness. Jiangjio's expression instantly changed when she saw this person. The first on the martial rankings, Cold Spear Li Mulin. The first on the martial rankings. The expressions of everyone on the city walls instantly changed when they heard this. The martial rankings. The martial rankings was absolutely the most valuable rankings in Pine Prefecture, and the first on the martial rankings wasn't an exaggeration at all. Even the first on the martial rankings had been invited. On the city walls, Jiangjio's expression was extremely unsightly. Li Mulin glanced at Yi Xian and then said, "I'll deal with this person. All of you go deal with those who are about to break through." As soon as Li Mulin finished speaking, over 20 black-clothed men with short sabers in their hands suddenly appeared. These black-clothed men directly charged towards Ling Han and the others. Moreover, there were some assassins from the Dark Realm whose true forms couldn't be seen around these black-clothed men. Yi Xian paid no attention to Li Mulin, and instead charged towards those black-clothed men at the side. Li Mulin said coldly, "You want to leave? You're dreaming." As soon as he finished speaking, he directly vanished on the spot. In an instant, a powerful spear intent suffused the surroundings. However, Yi Xian still didn't stop. When Li Mulin arrived around 3 meters behind Yi Xian, a woman in green suddenly appeared in Yi Xian's Kobe. In the next moment, Li Mulin instantly returned to his original spot. The woman in green looked at Li Mulin and then grinned. "You're the first on the martial rankings of Pine Prefecture?" No, that's a bit of an exaggeration." As she spoke, she pointed at herself and said, "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm from the Central Divine Prefecture, Monster Rankings. P.S. Please give me a ticket." Chapter 150. The Genius Rankings. It was Lu Banzwang's friend. Actually, the woman had arrived at Twin World City a long time ago, but she hadn't shown herself. That was naturally Yi Xian's idea. Take Kuraki Academy and the Dark Dimension by surprise. Li Mulin glanced coldly at the woman, and then he suddenly vanished. The corners of the woman's mouth curled up slightly, and then she flicked her finger forward. Her finger just happened to touch the tip of a spear. Bang! The spear shook violently, and then Li Mulin was instantly blasted over 30 m away. Li Mulin glanced at the trembling spear in his hand, and then a solemn expression appeared in his eyes. He was just about to attack again when a white-robed old man appeared not too far away from the woman. He was the exalted guardian of Kuraki Academy's main academy. The white-robed old man glanced at the woman. "Can you give my Kuraki Academy some face? My academy will definitely thank you generously in the future." The woman glanced at the white-robed old man and smiled. "Can you give me some face?" The white-robed old man's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not giving me any face." The corners of the woman's mouth curled up slightly. "What? You intend to threaten me?" As she spoke, she pointed at the white-robed old man. "Hit me if you can. Bring it on." The white-robed old man slowly clenched his right fist when he heard this. He naturally wanted to attack, but when he thought about how the woman was on the genius rankings, he didn't dare attack. It was undoubtedly extremely difficult to ascend the genius rankings, and it was utterly impossible for ordinary people to ascend it. Practically all those who were able to ascend it had the backing of a great power. It couldn't be said to be 100%, but at least 90% of them definitely had the backing of an enormous power. Moreover, the rules of the Central Divine Prefecture were that if the younger generation were to fight, then the older generation couldn't interfere. At the very least, they couldn't interfere in public. Otherwise, they would be breaking the rules. If he did, then it was very likely that he would make an enemy of Kuraki Academy, and it would be an extremely formidable enemy. The white-robed old man's expression was unsightly to the extreme. He'd truly never imagined that Yi Xian would know so many geniuses from the Central Divine Prefecture, and they were even willing to live and die with Yi Xian. This was something that neither Kuraki Academy nor Dark World had expected. At this moment, the white-robed elder suddenly turned his head and looked into the distance. In front of Yi Xian, there were already more than 20 black-robed corpses on the ground. Blood was everywhere. No one could block Yi Xian's sword. Previously, he wanted to let Li Mulin stall Yi Xian, but now it seemed that this plan had fallen through. The white-robed old man glanced at the distant horizon. There were at most 15 minutes before daybreak. "Let's go all out." The white-robed elder turned and looked to the right. "Attack!" After a moment of silence, a long saber suddenly pierced through the night sky, pointing straight at Yi Xian. The green-robed woman glanced at the long saber. She had no intention of attacking, nor could she, because Li Mulin was staring at her. On the other side, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. In the blink of an eye, he thrust his sword towards the right. Bang! The long saber suddenly stopped, but the momentum of the saber didn't disappear. Not only that, the spirit-elegant sword in Yi Xian's hand started to vibrate violently. Yi Xian's right hand spun slightly, and a wave of sword intent and battle intent surged into the spirit-elegant sword. In the next moment, the long saber was sent flying back from the impact. However, the next moment, a hand suddenly grabbed the hilt of the saber. In the blink of an eye, the long saber slashed down at the top of Yi Xian's head. Yi Xian raised his sword and stabbed. This stab directly hit the blade of the long saber. Bang! Yi Xian retreated 100 feet with his sword. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, the broadsword once again slashed towards his head. The broadsword slashed down. It had the power to split mountains and split the earth. Yi Xian took a step back. In the next moment, the ground beneath his feet cracked, and he charged forward with his sword in hand. The sword struck. The saber and sword collided again. Bang! The ground over 100 feet around Yi Xian instantly cracked, and he himself once again retreated over 100 feet. After Yi Xian stopped, he raised his head to look. Not far from him, a long-haired man was running towards him with a long saber in hand. The man's hair was very long, reaching his waist, and his arms were wrapped with many black chains. He stared fixedly at Yi Xian, his eyes cold and emotionless. On the other side, there were already people charging towards Ling Han and the others. Seeing this scene, the white-robed old man not far away slowly clenched his right hand. Would there be more changes? Just as this thought appeared in his mind, a man suddenly appeared in front of Ling Han and the others. The man looked 60 to 70% similar to Ling Han. Looking at the assassins charging at him, the man raised his hands in the air, and in an instant, his arms started burning. In the next moment, the man suddenly slapped the ground. The ground instantly cracked, and at the same time, a monstrous wave of fire shook the area. The two black-robed men in the lead were instantly swallowed by the wave of fire, and the remaining people retreated rapidly. The man stood up, glanced at Ling Han behind him, and then turned to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, the man with the saber had already charged in front of Yi Xian. Another slash. The long-haired man's saber technique was very simple, and there were no fancy movements. However, every slash was extremely domineering, and had the power to annihilate an army of 1,000. Yi Xian didn't retreat, but instead advanced. He took a step forward, and stabbed out with his sword. One strike to decide life and death. This strike was the same as the long-haired man's saber, and there were no fancy movements. However, when this strike appeared, the eyes of the green-robed woman not far away and the man in front of Ling Han on the right narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of seriousness in their eyes. One strike. One strike. The two collided again in the most violent way possible. Yi Xian instantly retreated 30 meters, and the long-haired man in the distance also instantly retreated 30 meters. However, the moment he stopped, the saber in his hand instantly shattered, and turned into a pile of powder that scattered on the ground. Meanwhile, his arm had already cracked into a spider web, and blood was gushing out. The long-haired man raised his head to look at Yi Xian. His right hand slowly clenched, and he was just about to attack again. However, it was at this moment that the assassins in the surroundings suddenly retreated like the tide. The sky was bright. Seeing this, the expressions of Jiang Jiu and the others on the city wall instantly relaxed. Once the sky was bright, the battle prowess of the assassins would decrease greatly, and at this time, these elite soldiers would be able to resist them. Of course, they had to fight with numbers. If it was nighttime, then there was absolutely no way to fight, and they could only be slaughtered. The sky became brighter and brighter, and very soon, the surroundings became clear. And there were only 4 people left facing Yi Xian and the others. The white-robed old man, the long-haired man, Li Linmu, and a middle-aged man dressed in a black robe. It was he who had been holding Lu Banzwang back. The white-robed old man glanced coldly at Yi Xian and said, "You want to play? My Kuraki Academy will play with you. Let's see who loses first." As soon as he finished speaking, the 4 of them turned around and left. Yi Xian lowered his head and glanced at his right arm. At this moment, his right arm had lost all feeling, and it hadn't been easy for him to deal with the long-haired man just now. Actually, this was normal. Kuraki Academy was definitely aware of his current strength, so how could they bring ordinary people? The people that came would only grow stronger and stronger. This time, Kuraki Academy and the Dark World were prepared to fight him to the death. Meanwhile, the green-clothed woman suddenly walked over to Lu Banzwang. Z suddenly walked over to Lu Banzwang, and then she suddenly hugged him and kissed him fiercely under the watchful eyes of countless people. She didn't kiss his face, she kissed his mouth. At the sight of this, Yi Xian and others were dumbfounded. The green-clothed woman let go of Lu Banzwang and chuckled, "Baby Lu, did you miss me?" Lu Banzwang glanced at the green-clothed woman and said, "There are so many men out there, but you only like women. There's something wrong with your head." Yi Xian was speechless. The green-clothed woman smiled naughtily. Actually, women are quite fun to play with each other. Hee hee. At the side, Yixian kept shaking his head as he listened. This woman was extraordinarily powerful. At this moment, the green-clothed woman looked at Yixian and the others and asked, "Your new friends?" Lu Banzwang nodded. The green-clothed woman sized up Yixian and said, "Dual cultivator of the sword and martial arts." "No, he also cultivates his physical body." "Triple cultivator? He's barely passable. Unfortunately, he's only a grandmaster of the sword Dao. If he was a sword master, he could make a name for himself in the divine central continent." Lu Banzwang's expression became slightly solemn when he heard this. In truth, only she knew what the green-clothed woman meant by making a name for herself. It was no ordinary adventure. At this moment, Jiang Jiao led a group of soldiers over to Yixian and the others. Jiang Jiao was expressionless as she looked at the corpses of the Jiang country's soldiers on the ground beside Yixian. These soldiers were all elite soldiers of the Jiang country who had risked their lives for the Jiang country countless times. A moment later, Jiang Jiao said softly, "Take them back and give them a proper burial. Make sure their families are well compensated so that they don't have to worry for the rest of their lives." Soon, the soldiers behind her took the corpses away. Jiang Jiao looked at Yixian. Yixian actually had many wounds on his body, and there were even a few cuts on his face. Yixian said in a low voice, "You have to be careful. It's very likely that those assassins will target you." Jiang Jiao said softly, "Imperial Father has already sent 300 death guards from the palace. These 300 are elites that the Jiang country has secretly nurtured. They will be responsible for my safety day and night." Yixian nodded. "That's good." After saying this, he turned around to look at Ling Han and the others. At this moment, their auras were becoming stronger and stronger, but they still needed at least 2 days to break through to the divine combination tier. 2 days. And in these 2 days, he and Lu Banzwang could not take even half a step away. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked at the man who looked like Ling Han. "How should I address you?" The man glanced at Yixian. "Ling Yu, cousin Yixian." Yixian said softly, "Many thanks." Ling Yu shook his head. "I should be the one thanking you. If it weren't for you, my disappointing younger brother would probably already be dead." Yixian said in a low voice, "Next, Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm might make new moves." As he said this, he clasped his fists at the green-clothed woman and Ling Yu. "Many thanks, you two." Ling Yu nodded slightly. He was naturally going to stay behind. He had come this time for Ling Han. On the other side, the green-clothed woman suddenly looked at Yixian and said with a smile, "It's very expensive for me to make a move. You asked me to stay behind, so how are you going to repay me?" As she said this, she looked up and down at Yixian, and a mischievous smile appeared at the corner of her lips. "You're also very handsome, hee." Yixian thought for a moment, and then said seriously, "Tell me, what position do you want? I'll definitely cooperate with you." The green-clothed woman. P.S. Our venerable sword doesn't have many readers who read the original version. If possible, please come to Zongheng Chinese Network to subscribe and support us. Especially the old readers, I really need your support, and I need you to return. Finally, everyone can go to other people's book reviews and help to advertise. Remember, don't say that I asked you to go, asking for tickets, asking for subscriptions. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 151. Who had Yixian been afraid of? Who had Yixian been afraid of? He had never had an opponent. Nearby, the green-robed woman was also stunned. Evidently, she had not expected such an answer from Yixian. In the blink of an eye, she suddenly walked in front of Yixian, lightly lifted Yixian's chin with her index finger, and smiled wickedly. "You know all kinds of positions? Really?" Evidently, she did not want to admit defeat. Yixian looked at Lu Banzwang and Lu Banzwang said calmly, "You guys play, I'll watch." Yixian. At this time, the green-robed woman blinked. "Why don't we play together?" Yixian shook his head. This woman was really too powerful. He did not continue to argue with the green-robed woman. He sat cross-legged on the ground, and then swallowed a golden sore pill. Not only had he expended a lot of energy in the previous battle, but he had also suffered injuries all over his body, especially his arm, which was still a little numb. The most important thing now was to heal. Because he did not know when Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm would start the next round of attacks. Lu Banzwang suddenly sat on the ground, then leaned against a rock, and began to sleep. She was actually not injured, because when she had fought with the middle-aged man, he had only been trying to restrain her. Thus, the two of them had not fought to the death. She wanted to, but the middle-aged man did not give her a chance, and continued to retreat. However, if she wanted to leave, the middle-aged man would catch up to her. She was not injured. She was just tired, and wanted to sleep. The green-robed woman glanced at Lu Banzwang, shook her head slightly, and said softly, "Instead of being the young mistress of the Lu clan, you had to come out and suffer. However, this is also good. The current you is much stronger than before." As she spoke, she also sat down, and then leaned against Lu Banzwang's body. On the other side, Ling Yu sat cross-legged on the ground, his eyes closed, and he was meditating. Behind them, the auras of Ling Han and the others were becoming stronger and stronger, inside the city. After Jiang Jiao returned to the city, he immediately returned to his tent. He had just returned when an elder quietly appeared. The elder bowed slightly to Jiang Jiao. The Yu nation and the Chu nation were originally going to retreat, but for some reason, they suddenly stopped. The armies of the two countries are stationed not far from the border of my Jiang country, and they have yet to make a move. Jiang Jiao squinted his eyes. Great Cloud Empire has made a move. The old man nodded. That's what your majesty guessed. Although Great Cloud Empire is far away from our Jiang country, if they really want to attack us, I'm afraid. At this point, he glanced at Jiang Jiao and said no more. Jiang Jiao sat on the chair with a hint of worry in his eyes. Great Cloud Empire. This was the largest empire in the Qing province. If Great Cloud Empire really attacked Jiang country, the fate of Jiang country would be Ningguo. In a certain hall in the palace, Tuoba Yen was wearing a very large fur coat. She leaned back on the dragon throne with a pile of memorials in front of her. At this time, a shadow suddenly floated into the hall. After entering the hall, the shadow floated to a dark corner of the hall. Tuoba Yen glanced at the corner. How is it? The shadow replied, replying to your majesty, the Tang Empire has been defeated. Now, the Jiang country has detained the king of Tang Empire, Tang Mu, and the grand marshal of the Tang Empire, Pei Xiaohu. I think the conditions have not been completely negotiated. However, with these two people in our hands, the Tang Empire is the meat of the Jiang country. Let's see how the Jiang country eats it. Tuoba Yen said indifferently, get to the point. The shadow bowed slightly and continued. The youngster named Yi Xian blocked the attack of the Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. Tuoba Yen asked, did you make a move? The shadow shook his head. No, because two monstrous geniuses from the divine central continent suddenly made a move. However, according to our investigation, the Dark World and the Kuraki Academy have not stopped. There are still people continuously stepping into the Jiang country's territory. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. There might also be people from the Great Cloud Empire. Great Cloud Empire. Tuoba Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, a cold light flickering in them. The Great Cloud Empire. Why did that King Kaoshan intervene in this matter? At this point, she was silent for a moment. Suddenly, her pupils shrank. Could it be that he wants to take this opportunity to unify the entire Azure province? Unify the Azure province. The hall suddenly became quiet. After a moment, Tuoba Yen looked at the shadow in the corner. Keep an eye on the Jiang country and that Yi Xian. If there is a critical moment, you can help. The shadow hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, Your Majesty, if we make a move, I'm afraid we will offend the Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. To offend these two forces for someone who is not from our Ning country, I'm afraid. Tuoba Yen suddenly narrowed his eyes, his gaze sharp as a knife. Why? Do I need you to teach me how to do things? The shadow hurriedly knelt on one knee. This subordinate doesn't dare. Tuoba Yen retracted his gaze. Aunt Jiang. As his voice fell, an old woman and an old man appeared in the hall. The old woman bowed deeply to Tuoba Yen. Your Majesty, this old subject didn't discipline her well. Tuoba Yen said indifferently, Your Majesty, your heart cares for the Ning country and speaks frankly. You should be rewarded. Go to the martial skill library to choose a martial skill. Hearing this, the shadow hurriedly said, Thank you, Your Majesty. At this time, Tuoba Yen said, You are an assassin, a death servant, not a strategist. What I need is a sword to kill for me and the Ning country, not a mouth. After receiving the martial skill, immediately withdraw from the shadow guard and stay for observation. Hearing Tuoba Yan's words, the shadow was stunned, and then hurriedly knelt down. Just as he was about to speak, Aunt Jiang suddenly shouted angrily, Stand down! The shadow trembled slightly, and then turned and vanished on the spot. Aunt Jiang looked at Tuoba Yen and bowed slightly. This old subject didn't discipline her well. Tuoba Yen shook his head. Little Dai is young and doesn't know her limits. She needs to be taught a lesson. Her talent is excellent and she has a special physique. Her future is limitless. Aunt Jiang can observe her in secret. If she is not disloyal this time, nurture her with all your might in the future. The old woman bowed deeply. Understood. Tuoba Yen said again, Send people to keep an eye on the country of Jiang. At the critical moment, let the shadow guard help. The old woman hesitated, wanting to speak but stopping. Tuoba Yen said softly, I know you have concerns. Helping the country of Jiang and Yixian will offend Kuraki Academy, the Dark World, and the Great Cloud Empire. However, have you ever thought that it might not be just a matter between Yixian, Kuraki Academy, and the Dark World? At this point, she got up and looked out of the distant hall. The situation in Azure Province may change. Compared to Kuraki Academy and the Dark World, I am more willing to believe in him. Two World City. Jiang Jiao came out of the city gate and came before Yixian. She sat in front of Yixian. I have something I want to hear your opinion on. Yixian looked at Jiang Jiao. What is it? Jiang Jiao said in a deep voice, The imperial court has been arguing about how to deal with the country of Tang. Some want to detain them and force the country of Tang to pay a large sum of money to redeem them, while some want the country of Tang to become a vassal of our country of Jiang, and some want to eliminate the country of Tang once and for all. At this point, she looked at Yixian. What do you think? Yixian asked in return, What about you? What do you think? Jiang Jiao glared at Yixian. I'm asking you. Yixian smiled. I don't understand these things. Jiang Jiao said in a deep voice, Tell me what you think. Yixian thought for a while, then said, Let them go. Jiang Jiao suddenly lifted his head to look at Yixian, a little shocked. Yixian said softly, Letting the country of Tang pay a large sum of money to redeem them will cause internal turmoil in the country of Tang, or even split. Moreover, they will become more and more resentful towards the country of Jiang, which will force them to side with the Great Cloud Empire. As for annihilating the country of Jiang, the current country of Jiang doesn't have the strength to completely annihilate the country of Tang. This chapter is not over, please continue. At this point, he paused for a moment, then continued softly, If we don't let them go, the Great Cloud Empire is likely to cultivate a puppet in the country of Tang. At that time, it will be meaningless for us to capture them. Let them go and form an alliance with them. Alliance? Jiang Jiao looked at Yixian. The two countries are mortal enemies. Yixian shook his head. You should know the current situation of the country of Jiang. The main force of the country of Tang is still there. If they attack Two World City at all costs, coupled with the country of Yu, country of Chu, and Great Cloud Empire, the situation of the country of Jiang will be even worse. Jiang Jiao said solemnly, But what if they go back and join the Great Cloud Empire? Yixian smiled. They have already been abandoned by Kuraki Academy and Dark World once, and have paid a painful price for it. I believe that they will not follow Kuraki Academy and Dark World anymore. Jiang Jiao looked straight at Yixian. What if? Yixian said with a smile, Then wipe them out again. Wipe them out completely. Wipe out the Tang Empire completely. Tell them this. Tell them I said it. Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, she suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian and gently touched the wound on Yi Xian's face. You can actually leave. Yi Xian can indeed leave. If he leaves, the powerhouses of the Myriad Law Realm can't make a move, and Kuraki Academy and Dark World can't do anything to him. Yi Xian smiled. Here, there are my brothers, people I care about, and Azure Billow Academy. I promised Old Man Ji. Jiang Jiu smiled. What about me? Yi Xian was slightly surprised, then smiled. Also someone I care about. The corner of Jiang Jiu's mouth slightly raised. How much? Yi Xian said seriously, very much. Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, she gently hugged Yi Xian. If I fall into the water with Little Lin, who will you save first? Hearing this, Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Jiang Jiu giggled. She gently patted Yi Xian's cheek. What a fool! After saying that, she turned and left. Dressed in silver armor, she was graceful and graceful. Yi Xian shook his head. What are these women thinking all day? An hour later, the Emperor and Pei Xiaohu suddenly left Two Realm City. The two came in front of Yi Xian. Tang Mu glanced at Yi Xian. Goodbye. Yi Xian nodded. Take care. Pei Xiaohu walked in front of Yi Xian and looked directly at Yi Xian. Aren't you afraid that we will go back and seek refuge with Kuraki Academy and the Great Cloud Empire? Yi Xian faced Pei Xiaohu. If you believe me, as long as the state of Jiang exists, the Tang Empire will not perish. Pei Xiaohu said, Can you represent the state of Jiang? Yi Xian shook his head. No. But I can represent myself. If the state of Jiang breaks the covenant, I will be the first to disagree. Of course, if the Tang Empire breaks the covenant, I promise that there will be no Tang Empire in this world in the future. Pei Xiaohu took a deep look at Yi Xian. If the state of Jiang does not break the covenant, as long as I, Pei Xiaohu, am here, the Tang Empire will not break the covenant. At this moment, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian and the others. The black-clothed man quickly came in front of Yi Xian and cupped his fists. Young Master Yi, the state of Yu and the state of Chu suddenly launched a raid. The state of Jiang has fallen to the south and east. The armies of the two countries have entered the state of Jiang. Yi Xian frowned slightly. How can this be? The black-clothed man said solemnly, The Great Cloud Empire has made a move. At this time, Jiang Jiu suddenly left the city with a team of cavalrymen. Jiang Jiu came in front of Yi Xian. I'm going to support them. Yi Xian was silent. On the side, Pei Xiaohu suddenly said, Ninth Princess, if you believe the old man can bring the Black Blade Guards and the Death Battalion with you. Jiang Jiu looked at Pei Xiaohu. Thank you. After speaking, she looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian faced her. Wait for me. Jiang Jiu smiled. Don't worry. Even if I die, I will take a look at you and listen to your voice before I die. Otherwise, I will not die in peace. End of this chapter. Chapter 152. A quarter of an hour later, Jiang Jiu left with the soldiers of Two Realm City. Along with Jiang Jiu, the Black Blade Guards and the Daredevil Battalion of Tang also left. Now, Two Realm City had become an empty city again. It could be said that if Tang suddenly launched a sneak attack, they could easily take down Two Realm City. However, Tang didn't do so. The Tang Empire and the Jiang Empire had been enemies for generations, and the enmity between them wasn't small. However, this time, they hated Kuraki Academy even more. The previous incident made them realize that Kuraki Academy and Dark World didn't take them seriously at all. They were just pawns that could be abandoned at any time. They didn't care about Tang's life or death at all. Of course, there was another reason, and that was Yi Xian. Yi Xian was still alive. As long as Yi Xian was alive, he was a deterrent to Tang, and they wouldn't dare to have any other thoughts. Outside Two Realm City, Yi Xian stood in front of Ling Han and the others. Their auras were getting stronger and stronger, surpassing the Nether Passage tier. Divine Combination tier. Yi Xian looked at Ling Han and the others and said softly, Brothers, work harder. Kuraki Academy and Dark World targeted him, while Great Cloud Empire targeted Jiang. It could be said that both he and Jiang weren't in a good situation. At this moment, the woman in green suddenly said, "You will drag yourself to death if you continue like this." Yi Xian looked at the woman in green, and she said calmly, "With your talent, if you cultivate without any distractions, you will definitely have great achievements in the future. However, you let yourself get involved in these messy disputes, which is not a good thing for you personally." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Responsibility." The woman in green frowned, "Responsibility?" Yi Xian nodded. A man should shoulder his responsibilities instead of running away. Of course, it will be easy if you run away. But if you are relaxed, the people around you will be very tired. At this point, he looked up at the far end. If he ran away, what about Mo Yunqi by Zhe, Jianji, Songlan Academy, Jiangjiu? As well as Ling Han and the others? The green-robed woman glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Soon, time passed slowly. The sky was dark. There was no one left in Two Realm City. It was completely silent, and it was the same outside the city. Yi Xian and the others were surrounded by pitch-black darkness. Yi Xian sat in front of Ling Han and the others, sword in hand. His face was expressionless, and the spirit-elegant sword in his hand was also extremely calm. Not far away, Lu Banzwang sat on a rock, still eating the flatbread. The green-robed girl lay on Lu Banzwang's lap and was also eating the flatbread. On the other side, Ling Yu sat cross-legged on the ground with his hands hidden in his sleeves like an old monk in meditation. The surroundings were silent. The green-robed woman glanced at Ling Han and the others. "They should be here soon." Yi Xian nodded. The auras of Ling Han and the others had already reached a critical point. As long as they broke through this critical point, they would be able to reach the Divine Unity tier. Once they reached the Divine Unity tier, the strength of Ling Han and the others could be said to have skyrocketed. One had to know that they currently had light-grade spirit tools on them. Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm definitely knew this as well. Thus, tonight would be another fierce battle. Time passed slowly and soon, it was dawn. At this time, the surroundings became even darker. Suddenly, there was a tearing sound in the darkness. Yi Xian raised his sword and stabbed. On the tip of the sword was a black arrow. The arrow didn't shatter, but instead spun rapidly. The powerful force shook the ground, and the spirit-elegant sword began to tremble violently. At this time, the green-robed woman nearby suddenly leaped up. In the next moment, she had already appeared several meters away. She took a quick step forward and lightly made a seal with her right hand. The green-robed woman suddenly floated back to her original spot. She had just landed, and the ground shook violently. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. The ground within several meters instantly cracked into a spider web. The green-robed woman's eyes narrowed slightly. The peak stage of the Divine Unity tier, to be able to use power to such an extent, not simple. In the distance, a man walked out from the darkness. The man wore black clothes, and his hands were wrapped in a layer of sackcloth. He didn't wear shoes, and his feet were wrapped in sackcloth as well, revealing only his toes. The green-robed woman's beautiful brows instantly knit together when she saw the man. "Lianzhan, I never expected you to come here." Lianzhan, a monstrous genius on the monstrous genius rankings. The man called Lianzhan glanced at the green-robed woman. 200 million gold coins and 500,000 supreme-grade spirit stones as long as I can keep you busy. What do you think? The green-robed woman smiled. All right, even I'm slightly tempted. Lianzhan spread out his right hand and then slowly clenched it. Since I've taken their money, I naturally have to put in some effort. Come fight. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly shot out explosively. A tearing sound that made one's scalp go numb instantly resounded in the surroundings. The corners of the green-robed woman's mouth curled up slightly. Then let's fight. As soon as she finished speaking, she charged out as well. On the other side, Lu Banzwang stood up because a middle-aged man had appeared not too far away from her. The middle-aged man was tall, and he emanated a fierce aura and imposing aura. he was the middle-aged man who'd restrained her last night. Lu Banzwang glanced at the man and said, "I'll definitely kill you." As soon as she finished speaking, she put away the flatbread, and her figure shook as she charged directly at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a hint of seriousness in them. In the next moment, he suddenly stomped his right foot, and with the help of the powerful pushing force from the ground, he shot out explosively like a cannonball. Boom! As soon as the two of them approached each other, a deafening explosion resounded in the surroundings. In the next moment, the two of them separated upon contact, but Lu Banzwang quickly charged forward again. Nearby, Ling Yu suddenly stood up. In front of him was Li Mulin, who was ranked first on the Azure Province martial roll. Without any nonsense, Li Mulin suddenly charged at Ling Yu. The spear in his hand suddenly trembled, and a cold light flickered on the tip of the spear. At the same time, a powerful spear aura swept towards Ling Yu like a storm, and the powerful spear aura directly uprooted the ground. It was an extremely shocking sight. Ling Han raised his head to look at Li Mulin, and his hands that were hidden in his sleeves suddenly stretched out. His palms suddenly burst into flames, and in the next instant his right hand clenched into a fist. In the next instant he took a step forward and threw a punch. This punch directly collided with the spear in Li Mulin's hand. Boom! A wave of flames instantly engulfed the spear, and at this moment, Li Mulin spun the spear in front of him, and a wave of spear rays surged out. The two of them instantly retreated. However, in the next instant, the two of them once again charged forward. Beside them, Yi Xian glanced at the woman in green and the others before raising his head to look at the darkness in the distance. The woman in green and the others were all pinned down. Who was his opponent? They didn't have to wait for long. In the distance, a man suddenly walked out from the darkness. He was dressed in a dark green embroidered robe, and his hair was tied up with a jade hairpin. His eyes were clear and calm, and there was not the slightest hint of emotion in them. There was a small red snake coiled around his right arm. The small snake was only the size of an index finger, and its eyes were cold and sinister, causing one to tremble in fear. The man walked to a position several meters in front of Yi Xian and looked directly at Yi Xian. Without any nonsense, he lightly tapped his right foot on the ground. The ground in front of Yi Xian and the man instantly split open, and then a powerful force suddenly shook out from within the cracked ground. This force pressed directly towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he turned slightly to the side, and at the instant he did so, his left hand suddenly blasted out with a punch. Bang! The two forces exploded as soon as they came into contact, and Yi Xian was shaken to the point of retreating repeatedly. However, the man had suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he pressed the fingers of his right hand together before pointing them forward. This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. It moved towards Yi Xian's throat. It was a very ordinary finger, and it didn't contain any fluctuation of profound energy. As soon as this finger was pointed out, a sword stabbed over. Spirit Grace sword. However, the man didn't dodge, and his finger directly tapped the tip of Spirit Grace sword. Bang! Spirit Grace sword shook violently, and Yi Xian instantly retreated by over 30 meters again. As soon as he stopped, the man in the distance suddenly opened his 5 fingers, and the next moment he lightly shook at Yi Xian through the air. The space in front of Yi Xian suddenly shook. Bang! As if he had suffered a heavy blow, Yi Xian instantly retreated by over 30 meters. As soon as he stopped, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and then a shadow had already arrived in front of him. It was that man. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of sword light shot out from his eye sockets. Bang bang! Following the sound of 2 explosions, the man returned to his original position. He glanced at his right hand, and in the center of his right palm, there were 2 cracks. The man raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Using the sword as eyes, this is the first time I've seen it. Yi Xian twisted his neck. Come, take a sword from me. As soon as he finished speaking, he lightly tapped his right foot, and in an instant, the power of the earth gathered around his body. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly disappeared from where he was. In the field, a ray of sword light flashed by. A sword strike to decide life and death. A sword strike that contained two types of intense and the power of the earth. The man's face was emotionless when he saw this sword strike approach him. He suddenly took a step forward, and then he tapped with his finger. This finger tapped directly onto the tip of the spirit sword. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! The man instantly retreated by over 30 meters. As soon as he stopped moving, a sword slashed towards him at an extremely swift speed. The man stretched out his right hand and swept his fingers horizontally. This sweep swept directly onto the blade of the spirit sword. Bang! The spirit sword was instantly swept flying. But right at this moment, Yixian suddenly appeared in front of him, and Yixian's fist smashed down. A punch to the head. The man suddenly opened his mouth, and his palm pressed onto Yixian's fist. Bang! The man didn't retreat an inch, but the ground in an area of over 100 meters behind him instantly shattered. The man's fingers suddenly closed around Yixian's fist, and he was just about to attack when Yixian suddenly opened his eyes. The man's pupils constricted slightly, and his left hand swept forward. Bang bang! Following two muffled sounds, the man retreated more than 30 meters. As soon as he stopped, Yixian appeared in front of him with a sword in hand. Then, a sword slashed towards his face. The man narrowed his eyes, and his hands suddenly closed together. With this, he directly closed around Yixian's spirit sword. However, the man's legs were half-squatting. Yixian was about to continue attacking when suddenly, an afterimage attacked from the side. Yixian's expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to retract his sword, the man in front of him held onto the spirit sword tightly, and he couldn't pull it out at all. At this critical moment, Yixian suddenly released his hand, and his right hand clenched into a fist as he punched towards the right. Bang! Yixian felt that his fist had landed on a hard piece of dark steel, and his entire arm instantly went numb. At this moment, the man in front of him suddenly lifted his leg and kicked his abdomen. Bang! Yixian retreated dozens of meters. Yixian had just landed on the ground when an arrow suddenly tore through the air. The arrow was extremely fast, and the timing was extremely crafty. It was so crafty that he couldn't dodge it at all. Yixian kicked off with his right foot, and he summoned the armor of earth. Bang! An arrow pierced the space between his brows, but it was forcefully blocked by the power of earth. However, the skin under the armor of earth split open. Nearby, a voice rang out from the darkness. There are only 30 monsters on the Divine Central Continent monster ranking. Now, 3 of them have gathered here to kill you. Yixian, you should feel honored. 3 monsters. End of this chapter. Chapter 153. 3 monsters. Yixian raised his head and looked into the distance. In the distance, the man held his spirit elegant sword tightly. The spirit elegant sword trembled violently, but it couldn't break free from the man's grip. Not far from the man's right stood a man in gray. The man was about 20 years old, slim, and had some black iron rings wrapped around his hands. In the dark, there was also an archer. The 3 of them were elites at the peak of the divine combination tier. And this divine combination tier wasn't an ordinary divine combination tier. The monsters on the monster list, it could be said that the 3 of them weren't weaker than Yixian at all. If the 3 of them joined forces, Yixian wouldn't be able to block them at all. Yixian slowly clenched his fists. The power of the earth surged madly into his body, and a powerful fighting spirit swept out from his body. Facing 3 monsters on the monster list, there was no fear in Yixian's eyes. Only fighting spirit. He couldn't retreat, and he definitely couldn't die. Because if he retreated and died, Ling Han and the others behind him would definitely die. Yixian's expression became slightly sinister, and in the next moment, he suddenly stomped his right foot. The ground beneath his feet instantly cracked and collapsed. Meanwhile, Yixian himself had already charged out. He was very fast, and almost instantly appeared in front of the man who held his sword. In front of Yi Xian, the man's pupils contracted. At this moment he had no choice but to let go of the spirit elegant sword, take a step forward, and throw a punch at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's right sleeve suddenly exploded, and a powerful force instantly surged into his right arm. Dragon power. At this moment, he activated the dragon power in the nation token that Tuoba Fu had gifted him. In the instant that the dragon power and the power of the earth converged, Yi Xian's right arm was directly ruptured, and blood splattered everywhere. The force was too strong, too strong. As soon as the two fists collided, the man was instantly sent flying 500 feet away. The man had just landed on the ground when his entire right arm burst apart. However, the moment the man was sent flying, the man in gray on the other side suddenly swept his leg at Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian was also sent flying. Not only that, but an arrow suddenly shot out from the darkness. Yi Xian had just landed on the ground when the arrow shot into his chest. However, it was forcefully blocked by the armor of earth. Nevertheless, the skin under the armor of earth cracked open. The armor of Gaia could not completely block the power of this arrow. Yi Xian stood up and the spirit elegant sword flew into his hand. It was his left hand because his right hand was cracked and the bones inside could be seen clearly. At this moment, the gray-robed man suddenly appeared in front of him. At the same time, an arrow shot out from the darkness. In front of Yi Xian, the gray-robed man's right foot was pressed against the ground behind him. He punched forward with both fists and the iron hoops on his arms flew out instantly. Sensing the power in the iron hoops, Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. He held the spirit elegant sword in his left hand and slashed forward. This time, he only used the power of the earth and did not dare to activate the dragon power. His body could not withstand the combination of the two powers. The sword slashed down. Bang! The spirit elegant sword shook violently and Yi Xian was directly sent flying more than 100 feet away. Just as he stopped, an arrow was already in front of him. Yi Xian opened his eyes suddenly. The arrow exploded a few inches away from his glabella. Yi Xian retreated several feet again. A stream of blood flowed slowly from his glabella. He was already exhausted. From the beginning until now, he had already severely exhausted his body. In addition to the injuries on his body, he was in an extremely bad situation right now. In the distance, the man with the red snake on his arm suddenly vanished on the spot. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Yi Xian. The man suddenly slammed his left palm down towards Yi Xian's head, and the space actually trembled. A wisp of a ferocious smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. He retreated instead of advancing, and he stabbed with the spirit elegant sword. A single strike to decide life and death. The sword stabbed directly into the man's palm. Bang! The ground under Yi Xian and the man's feet directly collapsed. Right at this moment, the red snake on the man's arm suddenly flew out at an extremely swift speed. It was even faster than Yi Xian's sword, and it pierced Yi Xian's chest before he could even react. Yi Xian's body stiffened. At this moment, an afterimage flashed, and then a leg swept towards Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian was instantly blasted flying. The red snake had just entered Yi Xian's body and was about to devour his internal organs when it seemed to sense something and vanished. When it appeared again, it was within the prison pagoda. When the red snake saw the world prison pagoda, it was first stunned. In the next moment, fear appeared in its eyes. It instinctively wanted to escape, but at this moment, a claw suddenly grabbed it. The red snake was terrified to the extreme, and its body trembled violently. In the blink of an eye, a piece of paper floated over to the red snake. There was a claw and a large symbol drawn on it. The red snake's eyes were filled with confusion. What does this mean? Another piece of paper floated over to the red snake. It was still a claw and a large symbol. How could the red snake understand this? It immediately shook its head. The claw suddenly exerted force. Bang! The red snake exploded and turned into a bloody mist. Outside the prison pagoda, Yi Xian, who had fallen to the ground, subconsciously trembled. because he could clearly feel everything that was happening inside the prison pagoda. The red snake did not know what the god on the second floor was trying to express, so it disappeared. Thinking about it this way, the god on the second floor was quite nice to him. Yixian was shocked by his own thoughts. Without thinking too much, Yixian quickly got up. He did not forget that he was now facing 3 monsters. 1 against 3. Could he beat them? It seemed like he could not beat them. Yixian turned to look at Lu Banzwang, who was not far away. Lu Banzwang had completely suppressed the middle-aged man. It was obvious that the middle-aged man could not beat Lu Banzwang, but Lu Banzwang would not be able to kill him in a short time either. The woman in green was also being held back by her opponent, and Ling Yu on the other side was the same. Right now, no one could help him. Yixian took a deep breath. Right now, he could only rely on himself. In the distance, the man stared at Yixian, his eyes filled with horror. How is this possible? How can you be unharmed? That snake was a divine unity realm monster that specialized in eating a person's internal organs. It was one of his trump cards. When it entered a person's body, it could instantly devour the person's internal organs. However, when the snake entered Yixian's body, he found that he had completely lost contact with the red snake. Yixian found it funny. Right now, he could activate the prison pagoda to take people in, but he did not dare to. Activating it once would definitely cause a big problem. Moreover, the sword Immortal sister had strictly ordered him not to act recklessly. Thus, unless he was in a dire situation, he would not easily activate the prison pagoda. However, he did not expect that the snake would run in by itself. After entering his body, it did not immediately devour his internal organs. Instead, it sensed the prison pagoda and just entered. It was fine if it went in, but it could not understand the scribblings of the god on the second floor. Wasn't this courting death? Actually, he was also drenched in cold sweat. He guessed that the god on the second floor was giving face to the sword Immortal sister or the prison pagoda. Otherwise, he would have died a long time ago. At this moment, the man in gray in front of Yixian suddenly spread his legs. The ground beneath his feet shook violently. Immediately after, his hands slammed into the ground and the metal rings on his hands suddenly sank into the ground. Bang! The ground beneath Yixian's feet instantly cracked. A powerful force shot up from the ground. Within this force, there were 10 pitch-black metal rings. Each ring was connected to the other, and each ring emitted a domineering and powerful force. Sensing the power contained within these metal rings, Yixian did not dare to hold back. He held the spirit elegant sword in his left hand and stabbed forward. One sword to determine life and death. This time, he used the single stroke determines life and death sword technique again. Although his current body did not allow him to use such a powerful sword technique, he had no other choice. Because if he could not block it, he would die. The sword slashed down. Bang! The black metal rings were instantly shattered by Yixian's sword. However, Yixian's entire body was thrown backward. At this moment, a golden arrow suddenly shot out from the darkness. It was extremely fast and arrived in front of Yixian like a bolt of lightning. Yixian opened his eyes abruptly. 2 beams of sword light shot out. However, the power of these 2 beams of sword light was much weaker than before. This was because his body had already been exhausted to a very serious extent. The 2 sword lights collided with the golden arrow. The golden arrow trembled violently, but the 2 sword lights exploded with a loud bang. The golden arrow shot straight in. Yixian's expression changed slightly. His sword stabbed the arrowhead and the spirit elegant sword shook violently. However, the arrow was directly shattered by the sword. However, another arrow shot over. It was too fast. Yixian forcefully twisted his body and avoided the vital parts. Swoosh! Yixian's entire body was instantly smashed more than 100 feet away. A golden arrow was stuck in his shoulder. On the ground, Yixian slammed his left hand on the ground and bounced up. At this moment, the man in gray suddenly appeared in front of him. Immediately after, the man in gray kicked him. Yixian did not block it. Instead, he forcefully endured the kick with his body. However, the moment he was sent flying, the spirit-elegant sword pierced into the thigh of the man in gray. Unfortunately, he did not manage to cut off the man in gray's leg with one strike. Because the moment the sword pierced into the thigh, the man in gray retreated several feet in an instant. Yi Xian himself was once again shaken more than 100 feet away. He had just stood up when a smear of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. It should be said that the blood didn't stop flowing. In the distance, the man in gray and the man in gray suddenly disappeared on the spot at the same time. A hint of savagery appeared at the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. He was just about to risk his life when Ling Han, who was behind him, suddenly stood up. The next moment, Ling Han directly rushed towards the two people. Who the F***CK dares to touch my big brother? Who dares to touch my big brother? Behind Yi Xian, several voices sounded out. P.S. Recently, some people have come to scold me in the book review section. Don't mind them. They're just jealous of my handsomeness, but this can't be helped. Is it wrong that I'm handsome? Is it wrong? A bunch of haters with a heart of jealousy. Sigh, handsome people have many quarrels. Everyone, don't scold those haters. Love the ugly, start with me. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 154. Besides Ling Han who'd charged over, Gan Wei, Yi Li, Nen Kaming, and Bai Zhe had stood up as well. The Divine Union Realm. All 5 of them had attained the Divine Union Realm. In next to no time, Bai Zhe and the others charged towards the nearby gray-clothed man and young man. At this moment, Bai Zhe and the others had extremely ferocious expressions on their faces. Because they were actually aware of everything that had occurred just now. When they saw Yi Xian being besieged to such a state, it felt like their hearts were being torn apart by blades. However, they had no other choice. They had to charge into the Divine Union Realm. Because only at the Divine Union Realm could they fight the gray-clothed man and the others. Otherwise, they would only be giving their lives away. 5 against 3. The gray-clothed man and the others were formidable indeed. Even if it was 3 against 5, they actually didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. After all, they were the most monstrous geniuses of the Central Divine Prefecture's younger generation. Not far away, Yi Xian sat on the ground. He seemed to be a little uncomfortable, so he simply lay on the ground, took out a golden sore pill, and swallowed it. He was exhausted. The battle from before was truly too exhausting. He was truly exhausted because he'd severely overexerted his body. Coupled with the injuries he'd sustained, his body could be said to be on the verge of collapse. At this moment, he didn't even want to move a finger. Right at this moment, a black shadow suddenly assaulted him from the side at an extremely swift speed. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly flashed past behind Yi Xian. This figure was even swifter. Bang! Along with an explosion, an afterimage retreated repeatedly, and it didn't take long for the afterimage to retreat into the darkness. Meanwhile, a man was standing by Yi Xian's side. Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi gazed coldly at the darkness in the distance, and he held a golden throwing knife in his palm. Meanwhile, a few more men arrived by Yi Xian's side. At this moment, all the members of the bandit mercenary group had attained the Divine Union Realm, and not a single one of them had failed. Mo Yunqi and the other members of the bandit mercenary group stood on guard by Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian felt extremely exhausted, and he wanted to sleep. This time, he didn't force himself to stay awake because Mo Yunqi and the others were by his side. He was at ease. Soon he fell asleep. Mo Yunqi and the others stood guard beside Yi Xian. They stared at the darkness around them, their eyes filled with cold, killing intent. Not far away. Bang! With a muffled sound, a figure was directly sent flying. This figure was the middle-aged man who was fighting Lu Banzwang. This time, the middle-aged man flew more than 100 feet, and as soon as he stopped, Lu Banzwang appeared in front of him again. In the blink of an eye, Lu Banzwang leaped into the air and slammed her palm down. When her palm landed, her entire palm became illusory. The palm had not yet arrived, but the momentum had arrived first. The ground beneath the middle-aged man's feet turned to dust. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted abruptly when he sensed the might of this palm strike. He squatted down in a half-squat, crossed his arms, and blocked it in front of him. The profound energy within his body surged into his arms like tidewater. The palm fell. Bang! The middle-aged man's feet sank into the ground, and his arms were torn apart. At this moment, Lu Banzwang landed on the ground and raised his knee to the middle-aged man's chin. Bang! The middle-aged man's throat instantly shattered, and fresh blood sprayed. Lu Banzwang gestured with her right hand, and the spatial ring on the middle-aged man's finger flew into her grasp. A wisp of an arc arose on the corners of her mouth when she glanced at its contents. After she put it away, Lu Banzwang gazed at Lian Zhan, who was fighting the woman in green clothes nearby. In the next moment, she suddenly vanished on the spot. Over 30 m away, Lian Zhan, who was fighting the woman in green clothes, suddenly turned around and punched. Bang! Lian Zhan retreated a few dozen steps. Lu Banzwang appeared by the woman's side. She glanced at Lian Zhan in the distance and was just about to attack when a voice suddenly resounded from the darkness in the distance. Retreat! Retreat! Lian Zhan pondered deeply for a moment, and then he turned around with the intention of leaving. Meanwhile, Lu Banzwang and the woman in green clothes suddenly vanished on the spot. Lian Zhan's eyes narrowed slightly when he witnessed this scene, and then he suddenly raised his hands. In an instant, 2 balls of strange black gas suddenly condensed on his palms. In the blink of an eye, a wisp of a ferocious smile arose on the corners of his mouth, and then he suddenly slapped his palms forward. The 2 balls of black gas shook violently before they exploded apart. Bang! Lu Banzwang and the woman in green clothes directly retreated to their original positions, and in front of them floated 2 balls of strange black gas. There was a trace of seriousness in the 2 women's eyes because they felt danger. However, the 2 of them did not have the slightest fear, and in the blink of an eye, they once again disappeared on the spot. In the distance, Lian Zhan's eyes narrowed slightly. He stretched out his right hand, and then suddenly clenched it. Break! His voice fell. In the distance, the 2 balls of black gas exploded with a loud bang. When Lu Banzwang and the woman in green clothes swept away the black gas, Lian Zhan had already disappeared, and on the other side, the man in gray clothes and the others had also disappeared. Lu Banzwang and the woman in green clothes rushed forward, but in the next moment, the 2 women suddenly stopped. The 2 women looked at each other, and it was unknown what they felt, but there was a trace of shock in their eyes. Ling Han and the others came to the 2 women's side, and Ling Han said in a low voice, "Do we chase?" The 2 women shook their heads at the same time. Ling Han still wanted to say something, but Lu Banzwang looked at Yi Xian, who was lying on the ground not far away. "Wait for him to recover." Hearing this, Ling Han nodded, and then came to Yi Xian's side with Gan Wei and the others. They did not wake Yi Xian, and instead stood around Yi Xian just like that. In the distance, the woman in green clothes said in a low voice, "This matter is not simple." Lu Banzwang fell silent. The woman in green clothes looked at Lu Banzwang, her expression quite serious. "That aura, the Middle Divine Continent's Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm are not risking their lives, but risking their lives. Even if he has a sword immortal behind him, he cannot afford to play with them. Those 2 forces have existed in the Middle Divine Continent for thousands of years, and their resources are very deep. They are not something that a sword immortal can easily contend with. Moreover, they have come looking for him. You should know very well yourself." Lu Banzwang did not speak. The woman in green clothes frowned. "Are you really going to continue getting involved in this mess?" Lu Banzwang still did not speak. The woman in green clothes said slightly angrily, "How long have you known him? Do you really want to leave your life in Azure Province? And the Lu clan, even if you don't think for yourself, you should at least think for the Lu clan, right? If they are dragged into this, do you think it is a good thing for the Lu clan?" Lu Banzwang shook his head slightly, and then walked in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian, who was lying in front of him, expressionless, and no one knew what he was thinking. Beside him, The woman in green clothes was so angry that she suddenly stomped on the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded by this sight. In next to no time, the horizon was suffused with a smear of dawn. The sky was bright. Meanwhile, Yixian still did not wake up. It was not until noon that he slowly opened his eyes. When he saw that Ling Han and the others were still there, he grinned. "You're all here." Ling Han and the others also smiled. It was good that he was fine. Yixian slowly stood up. He glanced at Ling Han and the others. At this moment, Ling Han and the others were already in the Divine Unity tier. Seeing that his brothers had all reached the Divine Unity tier, he was naturally happy. As for himself, he could actually start searching for spirit swords. However, he could only devour clear-grade swords now. A sword at the level of a superb spiritual sword would definitely not have a good effect on him. As for clear-grade swords, they were worth at least hundreds of millions of gold coins, and they were the kind that had a price but no supply. Yixian sighed in his heart. He was not just poor. At this moment, the fifth-floor master of the Drunken Immortal appeared not far from Yixian and the others. The fifth-floor master glanced at Yixian and wanted to say something but stopped. Yixian said softly, "Senior, do you have something to say?" The fifth-floor master nodded, and his expression was rather unnatural. "Young friend, just now, the Drunken Immortal suddenly recalled the Dao soldiers that had rushed over. Something might have happened." Hearing this, Yixian frowned. "Do you know the reason?" The fifth-floor master shook his head. "I don't know the specific reason, but there must have been two voices at the headquarters. If I'm not wrong, it should be Kuraki Academy and Dark Realm doing something." Yixian's frown deepened. The Drunken Immortal had always been supporting him, but now there were two voices within the Drunken Immortal. What exactly did Kuraki Academy and Dark Realm do? The fifth-floor master said in a low voice, "Young friend, don't worry. The Drunken Immortal has already decided to support you, and it will absolutely not change its mind under normal circumstances. I'll get to the bottom of this matter as soon as possible." Yixian nodded. "Alright, there's one more thing. I hope that Senior can help me find a sword. It would be best if it's a clear-grade sword, just one will do." His current wealth was only enough to buy one, and he truly couldn't afford any more. Even though he had quite a bit of money, his expenses were quite high as well. Especially for Tsanglan Academy. Tsanglan Academy hadn't completely gotten on the right track, and it had no source of income. If he couldn't produce the money, then the students of Tsanglan Academy would probably have to starve. A clear-grade sword. The fifth-floor master thought for a moment and said, "Alright, I'll immediately notify the headquarters and the Azure Prefecture's Kuraki Academy to find a clear-grade sword for you as soon as possible." He paused slightly at this point, and then he continued, "Her Highness has already rushed to the southern border of the state of Jiang. However, the soldiers she brought over will probably be unable to resist the state of Yu and the state of Chu because the Great Cloud Empire is definitely supporting those two states. Young friend, it's best for you to hurry to the southern border immediately so that nothing happens to the ninth princess." "The Great Cloud Empire," Yixian said in a low voice. "Has the Great Cloud Empire sent troops over?" The fifth-floor master replied, "I don't know for now. However, you must be careful. The Great Cloud Empire has a history of almost 3,000 years in Azure Prefecture, and its resources are so deep that they aren't inferior to some powers in the Central Divine region at all." Yixian nodded. He fell silent for a moment, and then he looked at Ling Yu and the others. "Do you need to rest?" All of them shook their heads. Yixian looked at Lu Banzwang, and Lu Banzwang whistled. Soon, a dozen black wolves rushed out of Two Realm City and stopped in front of Yixian and the others. Yixian and the others leaped onto the backs of the wolves. Yixian faced the fifth-floor master. "Senior, there are 30 demonic beasts in the city. Please bring them to the Azure Tide Academy." The fifth-floor master nodded. "Alright." Yixian then turned to Bai Zhe, who was not far away. "Go back with Senior. Remember to restrain these demonic beasts and the students of the academy. If anyone dares to cause trouble for me, I'll come back and break their legs." With that, he led the others and rushed out. In the blink of an eye, the group disappeared into the distance. Ling Yu also followed, but the green-robed woman did not. Looking at Yi Xian and the others in the distance, the green-robed woman sighed softly. "The so-called brotherhood will kill you." Not far away, Bai Zhe looked coldly at the green-robed woman. "I can die for Bandit Yi and the others at any time. What is brotherhood? If we can't live and die together, how can we call each other brothers?" With that, he turned and left. Chapter 155. Brothers? The green-robed woman was expressionless and said nothing. She naturally knew what brotherly love was, because she also had friends, such as Lu Banzwang. If not for Lu Banzwang, she would not have rushed here from the central divine continent. However, brotherly love was not the only thing in this world. The green-robed woman raised her head and looked into the distance, a complicated look in her eyes. She was naturally worried for Lu Banzwang, because she realized that this matter was no longer just a battle between the younger generation. In the central divine continent, the battles between the younger generation would be controlled within a certain range, or they would not interfere, allowing the younger generation to fight and charge their own way. But now, Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm were not being controlled, and not only were they not being controlled, but they were also trying to kill each other. This was not targeted at Yi Xian. This was targeted at Yi Xian and his disciple. This was no longer a battle, but a battle to the death. A battle to the death between two great forces was relatively rare in the central divine continent, because the implications were too great. It had to be known that forces of this level would definitely have allies, and once a battle to the death, it was very likely that several forces would be involved. And Kuraki Academy and the Dark Realm had existed in the central divine continent for thousands of years, so how deep their foundations were. Once such forces fought to the death, how terrifying would it be? Could a single sword immortal stop them? Even two sword immortals might not be able to. After all, being a sword immortal did not mean being invincible. The green-robed woman sighed softly, and then followed them. She was not doing this for Yi Xian, but for Lu Banzwang. Since persuasion was useless, she could only help. On a plain, Yi Xian and the others were sprinting. Although Yi Xian and Lu Banzwang had not reached the divine combination tier, their strength could be said to have far surpassed it. Reinforcements. The southern side of the Jiang nation had already fallen, and the Great Cloud Empire was definitely involved. Under such circumstances, even if Jiang Jiao went, he would not be of much use. He had to reach Jiang Jiao's side as soon as possible. And now, Ling Han and the others were already at the Divine Reunion tier, and added with their top-grade equipment. If the 11 of them entered the battlefield, they would be like a sharp sword that could pierce a bloody path through tens of thousands of soldiers. Ning Nation. Tuoba Yen stood on a city wall. She wore a tight-fitting dragon robe with her right hand behind her back. Her long hair draped over her shoulders as she looked ahead. At this time, an old woman appeared by her side. The old lady bowed slightly to Tuoba Yen. "Your Majesty, we found out that Great Cloud Empire has indeed made a move. There are soldiers of Great Cloud Empire in the armies of Chu and Yu." Tuoba Yen narrowed his eyes. "Is it the Black Flame Army?" The old woman shook her head. "I'm not sure." Tuoba Yen slowly closed his eyes. "Have the Golden Guards and the Shadows get ready." The old woman looked up at Tuoba Yen and said in shock, "Your Majesty." Tuoba Yen opened her eyes and looked at the distant horizon. A moment later, she softly said, "Without the lips, the teeth will be cold." Country of Jiang, Drunken Immortal Inn. In the room, the 5th floor master sat beside him. In front of him was the 8th floor master. Other than them, there was also an old man. The old man sat in the main seat. This person was the 4th floor master of the Drunken Immortal restaurant who had rushed over from the headquarters. An expert above the 10,000 Laws realm. On the 4th floor, he took a sip of tea and said softly, "We should stop now." "Stop now?" The 5th floor master frowned. Is this the headquarters decision? The fourth floor master nodded. It's the decision of everyone. The fifth floor master shook his head. I don't understand. Our drunken immortal in has been supporting little friend Yi Xian since the beginning, and we've offended drunken immortal in and Kuraki Academy because of this. If we stop now, the gains don't make up for the losses. The eighth floor master also nodded. Indeed. Since we've already supported him, why not do it to the end? The fourth floor master glanced at the two of them. You might not know this, but this time, Kuraki Academy and Dark World have applied for the life and death writ from the Guardians. The Dao Protectors have already agreed. The life and death writ. Hearing this, the eighth floor master and fifth floor master's expressions changed. In the Divine Central Continent, two factions could not casually start a war. It was possible to start a war, but they had to apply for the life and death writ. Once they applied for the life and death writ, it would be a fight to the death. To put it bluntly, Kuraki Academy and Dark World could start an all-out war at any time. In the past, they could not start an all-out war at will, but now, they could suddenly attack any faction. This was no longer a matter that concerned the younger generation. The fourth floor master said softly, they aren't just targeting Yi Xian this time, and they're targeting that sword immortal who stands behind him as well. If our drunken immortal intends to continue participating, then we must prepare for an all-out war. If we really fight to the death, then our drunken immortal will have no advantage at all, and we can't do that. The fifth floor master and eighth floor master fell silent when they heard this. An all-out war. To put it in simpler terms, if they were to fight now, then it wouldn't just be those below the Dharma realm. All of them might have to participate in the war, and it was even to the extent that experts above the Dharma realm might have to participate as well. If they fought like that, then many would die. The drunken immortal didn't want to fight like that because the losses would be too great. A short while later, the fourth floor master sighed lightly. Pulling one hair will affect everything. The drunken immortal can't fight like that. Because once we do, then it won't just be a severe injury, it's very likely that we'll lose our lives. Of course, we should help him if it's within our ability. For example, if he needs to buy something, sell something, or even provide information. However, we can't send our forces to fight the Dark Dimension and Kuraki Academy head-on. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at the fifth floor master and said, once we're done here, return to the Central Divine Prefecture with me and focus on breaking through to the Dharma realm. The fifth floor master fell silent for a short while before he said, he needs a light-rank sword. The fourth floor master nodded slightly. All right, I'll immediately send someone to search for one for him. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and walked towards the outside. But when he arrived at the door, he stopped once more. Remember, don't mix it with too much personal feelings. All of you represent the immortal indulgence inn, and the slightest bit of carelessness will bring calamity to our inn. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished through the door. In the room, the fifth floor master smiled bitterly. The eighth floor master spoke softly, that's all that my drunken immortal can do. The fifth floor master nodded, I naturally understand. Alas, I just never imagined that the Dark Dimension and Kuraki Academy would actually be so determined. The eighth floor master said, Yi Xian is truly too much of a monstrous genius. Most importantly, he has a sword immortal backing him. The Dark Dimension and Kuraki Academy are too fearful of him, and they don't dare to allow Yi Xian to grow at all. Moreover, their actions are equivalent to cutting off all other paths of escape for Yi Xian. The fifth floor master gazed at the eighth floor master, and the latter spoke softly, there's probably another reason why the Dark Dimension and Kuraki Academy are so resolute, and it's because they're afraid that Yi Xian will head to the Central Divine Prefecture and join another power like the Azure Wave Academy. If Yi Xian really joins a power at that time, then Kuraki Academy wouldn't just be targeting a sword immortal. But now that Kuraki Academy and the Dark Dimension have made their stand clear, those powers in the Central Divine Prefecture will naturally not accept Yi Xian at a time like this. The fifth floor master sighed softly. Not to mention the other powers, even the Pavilion of Drunken Immortals wouldn't dare protect Yi Xian. Because if they did, then they would have to be prepared to fight to the death with Kuraki Academy and the Dark Dimension. A short while later, the fifth-floor master stood up. "I'll help as much as I can." With that, he turned around and vanished on the spot. At the southern border of the state of Jiang, Mizar City, Jiangjio stood on the city wall and gazed ahead. There was a dense mass of cavalry at the end of the horizon. The Chu Kingdom's cavalry. There were over 100,000 of them. It could be said that the Chu Kingdom's cavalry had been mobilized. Besides that, there were some infantrymen around the cavalry. They were the infantry that would attack the city. There were around 100,000 soldiers in Mizar City as well, and they were waiting to be attacked. Naturally, they had many advantages. However, the expressions of everyone on the city wall were extremely solemn, because the experts of the Great Cloud Empire of Azure Prefecture might be hidden amongst the cavalry in the distance. The Great Cloud Empire, the supreme overlord of Azure Prefecture. The most terrifying thing was that the empire had a mysterious and formidable army, the Black Flame Army. That army of less than 100 had destroyed an entire empire. How terrifying was that? Everyone was afraid of the Great Cloud Empire. But now, everyone in the state of Jiang had no choice but to fight. If they didn't fight, they would be beaten to death. Jiangjio suddenly turned to look at a deputy general beside her. "How's the situation in the east?" The deputy general said in a deep voice. "Old Marshal Lin Xiao has defended the area, but the situation is not good. There are some Divine Unity Realm experts among the Yu Kingdom soldiers, and there are quite a number of them. These people are extremely powerful, and ordinary soldiers can't stop them." After Marshal Pei Xiaohu rushed over, the situation improved a little, but he only dares to defend and doesn't dare to attack. It's very passive. Jiangjio nodded slightly. "Understood." At this moment, the cavalry in the distance suddenly moved. Everyone on the city wall quickly raised their heads. In front of the Chu Kingdom's cavalry was a group of infantry sieging the city. There were about 20,000 of them, and there were thousands of them. These people were not soldiers, but civilians. The civilians of the state of Jiang. Among them, there were old people, women, and children. Seeing this scene, Jiangjio's expression instantly turned ugly. At this moment, the soldiers on the city wall also had extremely ugly expressions. Soon, the Chu Kingdom soldiers forced the civilians to approach the city. When the civilians saw the soldiers of Jiang Kingdom, they immediately ran towards the city as if they had gone mad. Without a doubt, this was their last straw to clutch at. When they saw this scene, the soldiers on the city wall looked at Jiangjio. The civilians were getting closer and closer, and behind them were the Chu Kingdom's sieging soldiers. Once the civilians got close, the sieging soldiers would seize the opportunity to break through the city gate. At that time, countless people in Mizar City would die. Not only Mizar City, but the Chu Kingdom's cavalry could even go all the way south to the imperial capital of Jiang Kingdom. The civilians were getting closer and closer to the Chu Kingdom soldiers. At this moment, Jiangjio suddenly took a step forward with an expressionless face. "Release the arrows." You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.